like to call the December 7th, 2021 Village Board meeting to order. Right, will you lead us in the pledge?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please, Allison. Trustee White.
Here.
Trustee Shelley.
Here.
Trustee Levy. Here. Trustee Heron.
Here.
Trustee Bonnie.
Here.
Trustee Walter is absent. President Cohen. Here. We have a quorum. Thank you. Under public hearing this evening, we don't have anything. Nothing under appointments and presentations. Airport report. Joe.
I think I was expecting the state of Illinois to give an economic report by now. They said they were going to deliver one on airports in Illinois about 3 months ago, but they haven't got it yet. So I'm going to try to do it this way and tell you what's going on at the airport. They have 200 full-time employees. Now that's probably a little number. Culver Air has been bringing in people from other airports to work in Aurora. They have 76 part-time employees, and they come and go. Some of those are pilots that come in on their days off and train other pilots to become pilots, or become students to become pilots. So there's the J area uses experienced pilots for training purposes. There's 194 buildings. The majority of those are single buildings that house single aircraft, and most of the owners are just recreational flyers in the majority of the buildings on the airport. There's 17 businesses, and they're just a variety of aircraft businesses. One of them is air ambulance service. I don't know if you were aware of that, but you know, they do the medical flying. Another one, a small one, is a small air company that trains pilots, but it's a small company, just fly, and they're located. You may have seen them out at the Sandwich Fair every year. They go to the Sandwich Fair and advertise their business out there every year. So if you've been to the Sandwich Fair and walked around by the camping gear and stuff like that, that's where they're usually at. They're a small company, but they're growing. They'll never be big like J Aircraft, but they're a business. There's 5 jet businesses there, and that they're part of the 17, and that includes J Air and Rev. And those businesses repair jet aircraft. And that's pretty much but as you can see with 17 business, it's a pretty busy airport with 200 employees and 17 businesses. Probably a lot busier than you would think of. It looks kind of deserted most of the time, but there's a lot going on. The other thing I'll mention is that Aurora has always had the idea that they would rather have growth, physical growth, than economic growth. Because they need the physical growth to maintain the control tower. A few years back, there was thoughts that the FAA may close the tower because there was a lowering of flights at the airport. And that was a few years back, and business was pretty slow. So Aurora has always been one that puts the growth and had profits because they think that with the right company that the profits will come. Now, they felt that J Air would be that company, and J Air thought that they would be that company. But it didn't happen. J Air is not going to be expanded any bigger than the air. But Carver Air could be huge. They are a growing company throughout the Midwest, and depending on the business model they choose, that could be a boom for the Aurora Airport in the area. So, I think that we'll just have to see what Carver Air plans for the Aurora Airport. But there is, and I don't have the figures, but there is a lot of money that comes out of that airport for the economic growth of the whole airport area. And if it ever comes, I'll share it. So that's so I've tried to give you an idea of what goes on at the airport and what aviation is about there. And I'm not an expert on it, but I tried my best.
No, you're doing great. My question would be to you, and I'm sure we don't have an update, but I know that they had applied for that grant for the runway. Any updates on that? Whether they received it or not?
Aurora just received $1.6 million in Go Illinois grant money. We put out a grant money, but I'm not sure. I just found that out today. I'm not sure if that's going to the runway or other projects. I have to look into that to see where that $1.6 million goes. But they've been waiting on that grant for quite some time, and it was just announced today that they are receiving that grant.
Okay.
So I will follow up and find out where that $1.6 million is going.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Does anyone have any questions for Joe? No? Okay. Thank you for the update. I appreciate it.
Thanks, sir.
Okay. Moving on. Okay, good question. Public comment on items scheduled for action this evening under the consent agenda. We have approval of the minutes of the November 16th, 2021 Village Board meeting, approval of the vouchers, an ordinance for tax levy for the fiscal year May 1st, 2022 to April 30th of 2023, an ordinance tax levy of the Mallard Point Special Assessment for the fiscal year May 1st of 2022 through April 30th of 2023, a resolution declaring notice of the 10th installment accrual of the interest in adoption of the Special Assessment Supplemental Bond and Procedures Act, an ordinance abating the 2021 taxes related to debt service on the $5,460,000 of the 2013 A general obligation to alternate revenue bonds, an ordinance abating the 2021 taxes related to debt service on the $3.1 million from 2017 general obligation alternate revenue bonds, an ordinance establishing an SSA number 28 for Rosewood Farms. Under general business, we have an ordinance granting a fence height variation at 31 Meadows, an ordinance granting a special use for a shed, 470-480 Hartwood Drive, an ordinance granting a variation for a shed material, 470-480 Hartwood Drive, a resolution professional services agreement for the 2022 road program. Are there any public comments on those items scheduled for action? Going once? Going twice? Okay, 3 times, hearing none, we're moving on. Are there any requests by board members to remove any items from the consent agenda? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda as previously stated?
As stated. Second.
Thank you. Trustee Shomas is a first, and second on Trustee Heron. Roll call, please, Allison.
Trustee Shomas?
Aye.
Trustee Heron?
Aye.
Trustee Bonnie?
Aye.
Trustee Lindy?
Aye.
Trustee White?
Aye.
So everybody, motion passes. That went fast. Thank you. Under general business, this evening, we have an ordinance granting a fence height variation at 31 Meadows. Walter.
All right, the applicant is requesting a variation to allow a fence of 6 feet instead of the maximum 3 feet in the corner side yard. This location should be familiar to the board. It's across the street from 6 Main Street, where we recently dealt with a special use permit variation as well. The zoning board of appeals conducted a public hearing. There were no objectors present, and essentially they had no issues with the request at this location.
Thank
And
you.
they recommended approval.
Thank you. Any discussion on this item?
What sort of limits do we have as far as the fence materials or anything there that we would want the homeowner to use or is all?
Well, the homeowner is proposing PVC material, so it's,
The privacy stuff.
yeah.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the ordinance granting a fence height variation for 31 Meadows?
So moved.
Trustee Heron?
Second.
Second on Trustee Bonnie. Roll call, please, Allison.
Trustee Heron?
Aye.
Trustee Bonnie?
Aye.
Trustee White? Trustee Lindy? Trustee Shomas?
Aye.
Thank you, motion passes. Next up, we have an ordinance granting a special use for a shed at 470 or 480 Heartland Drive. Walter?
Okay, this is the building commonly known as Depot Industries. They have a need to have a shed placed on property for storage of equipment that they otherwise can't place inside the building. And the zoning ordinance requires a special use permit for accessory structures in the M1 district, and that's why it's before you tonight. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on the special use permit request. No objectors were present. They had some concerns about what would be stored in the shed, and in their recommendation, recommended that the fire extinguisher be placed in the shed. Village staff has, while the concern is well founded, the concern is fire extinguishers not going to survive the constant temperature changes. And given that the building is precast concrete, the risk of fire to the building from anything that occurs in the shed is minimal. So the ordinance that's attached does not include that recommendation.
Perfect.
Or condition of approval.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on this? Yes, please.
What I'd like to see on this one longer is that exhibit that's at page 27 in our packet.
Yep.
Shows the location. Be added as a condition. It just says it has to be in the rear yard.
Okay.
Like one of the things that makes this palatable is that it's easy to see in the rear yard.
Okay.
So I don't know if everybody else agrees with that, but I'm fine with it.
No, that makes sense. Any other discussion? Okay. Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the ordinance granting a special use for a shed at 470 to 480 Heartland Drive?
would make that motion with the addition of the submitted matter after page 27.
Thank you.
Condition.
Thank you. And a second on that motion?
Second.
A second on trustee Heron. Roll call please, Allison.
Trustee White.
Aye.
Trustee Heron.
Aye.
Trustee Lindy. Trustee Showman.
Aye.
Trustee Bonner.
Excellent, motion passes, thank you. Up next, we have an ordinance granting a variation for shed material at 470-480 Heartland Drive. Walter.
The zoning ordinance requires accessory structures in the commercial and industrial districts to be constructed of the same material as the principal building. B code is reluctant to just use related construction as a shed, much like any other accessory structure or storage shed in a residential yard. The zoning board of appeals held a public hearing on the variation request. No objectors were present, and under the circumstances at this location, the zoning board of appeals had no issue with the materials that they're using in the shed, or shed construction.
Okay. Is there any discussion on this item? None? Hearing none. Can I get a motion to approve this ordinance granting a variation of shed material at 470-480 Heartland Drive? Thank you. First on trustee White. Second on trustee Bonnie. Roll call please, Allison.
Trustee White.
Aye.
Trustee Bonnie. Trustee Showman.
Aye.
Trustee Lindy. Trustee Heron.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Up next, we have a resolution for a professional service agreement for the 2022 road program. Toby.
At the last meeting, we had the CMAP 5-year pavement management study was presented. And moving forward after that, we had EEI Chris out here to present our 2022 program, which is the first year of the 5-year program that was presented last meeting. So Chris has a presentation to move forward with the road program.
Excellent. I don't know which way I'm going, but I'm slide over, please. Now, will I have to do this if it doesn't matter to me? What's that?
First, you gotta duck.
Yeah. Here's my okay, here we go. It's working. Alright, so.
Great. Mask.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm here to talk about the 2022 road program, as well as the power plan, and just a recap of some of the stuff from the CMAP presentation from last week. So, first thing, we'll go over the village roadway system, just how many miles you've had and how that's changed over the years. Second is we'll do a quick recap of the CMAP pavement management study. Then we'll get into the proposed 5-year road program. Go over some budget review about the recommendations that came out of the report, and then discuss the next steps. So first, the village roadway system. So the village has 59.4 centerline miles. When we did our original pavement management study back in 2003, the village had 40 miles. So you can kind of see what the growth has been from 2003 to 2006, and then there hasn't been any changes in the overall centerline miles since the pavement management update that was done in 2011. The red are the residential streets, the blue are the collector streets, the main streets. One thing to note with those blue streets is those are the streets that would qualify for STP funding through the Kane County Council of Mayors. So the village has been really aggressive about applying for those funds to identify cost sharing options, and we'll go over a couple of the streets that are currently trying to get funding. So back in 2003, when we did our initial report, the overall PCI for the village was 75.9. And then when we did a new study in 2006, the PCI went up to 78.2 due to the growth that occurred between 2003 and 2006. So all those new streets bumped the score up. Then in 2011, the score went back down to a 74.2. And then ultimately here in 2021, the overall village PCI is at 69.3. In this next slide, we'll kind of get into why that PCI has declined. So in the early 2000s, the road network grew significantly, and that's why the PCI increased there from 2003 to 2006. At that time, the recommendation of the report was to be spending a little under $800,000 on average per year. At that time, over the course of that year, from 2006 to 2011, on average, the village was spending a little bit more than $600,000. So because of that gap of underfunded streets, the PCI decreased from a 78.2 to 74.2. Then, in the 2011 report, it was recommended that the village spend $1.4 million to maintain that 74.2 PCI. At that time, with the funds that were available, the village has averaged over the last years to be spending a little under $800,000. Just please note that's an average. Some years have been more than that, some years have been less. And that, because of that result, that has resulted in the PCI to decrease down to 69.3. So you can kind of see what the effects of not being able to fully fund the program. The last slide here on the village roadway system is just one of the main sources that the village has to pay for their road system is MFT dollars. This is just a comparison on how you compare to other communities on the total number of miles you have versus the MFT dollars that you have. And the purpose of this is to show that there's communities that have not that many more miles than the village, but have a higher population, which means they get more MFT dollars. So MFT is based on a population system. So the lower you are, the lower your bar graph, the less your money goes per mile, essentially. So it's just with the nature of the village and how spread out it is and everything, that's just another thing that the village is contending with in comparison to some neighboring communities. So just a quick recap of the CMAP pavement management study. So what did they do? They had up in the upper left there is a laser profile that goes through and measures takes pictures of the roadway and then measures all the distresses. And what's in the bottom left there is a picture of the image that gets taken and then how they measure those distresses. And then the color that's in the middle there represents the severity of that distress. So all that gets taken into account. They drive every single mile in the village. That's what's called the data collection part. And then once that's finalized, they enter that into a pavement management program. In this case, it was PAVER. That produces a pavement condition index, which is a score 0 through 100 to be able to rate your score of your roads against each other. So there's a PCI for every road in the village that we received, and then an overall PCI for the village as a whole. Currently, the overall PCI for the village is 69.3. So once that's done, you do some modeling in the software to talk about how much money you should be spending, come up with the different treatments and which streets you want to do based on their rating and what you want to do to that street. Come up with a pavement program kind of recommendation and plan. Then we staff review the report, kind of that pavement management 5-year plan that the program spits out doesn't take into account grouping the streets together or other projects that might be going on in the village or some of that finer details that I wouldn't know. That's where the staff input came into play, adjusted that 5-year plan, and ultimately came up with a 5-year capital improvement program that's being presented today. And then this last slide on this is just kind of general pavement management recommendation would be to try and get to your roads before they deteriorate too fast. So you don't want to be down here fixing your roads. You want to be up here on this flag and the things. And then you want to do the preventative measures to hopefully make this curve go out a little bit further, and then maybe you can get more years out of your pavement by doing the cheaper preventative measures up front instead of doing the more expensive resurfacing and reconstructions at the end. And then one thing they put together was, all right, if you spend X amount of dollars per year, what does that do to your overall PCI? So currently in 2021, the village PCI is a 69.3. If you were to not spend any money over the next 5 years, that would decrease down to like a 52 or 53. If we maintain what we're currently spending, which is about 1.1 million, it would go down to like a 63, 64. Maintain current condition, so to maintain where we're currently at would be to do 1.7 million. And then if you wanted to target a higher PCI or eliminate all the backlog, you can see what those would do to your overall PCI as well. One other thing that we like to do is a road maintenance cycle. So typically to resurface a street, it costs somewhere between $450,000 to $500,000 per mile. So based on knowing that in a 60-mile roadway, we know how many total dollars it would take to resurface every street in town. Then you divide that based on your annual expenditure, and you can figure out approximately how long it will take you between touching the road now and when you would be back to do it again. So at your current average annual expenditure over the last 6 years at $794,000, it would take 38 years for you to resurface every street in town. With the projected annual average expenditure that we're shown in this presentation of a little over 1.45 million, that decreases down to about every 21 years. And then if you go based on this CMAP recommendation to maintain your current condition, would see you resurface your streets about once every 18 years.
What's the normal life expectancy?
I would say in general you would expect to get 15 to 20 years depending on exactly what you do to the street, you know, what type of resurfacing you do. If you do the preventative maintenance stuff, you could probably stretch that out, but you want to be somewhere in the 15 to 20 years, maybe pushing 25, but no more than that typically. So the proposed 5-year program, so...
Could I just add one more item with right now, some of your current roads they already have like on them. You drive down, you see cracks. So it's not like every road's new. So that 15 to 20 years might be more like 35 to 40 years for some of those roads if you don't touch those now. Does that make sense? Because it's already got history. Sorry.
So the proposed 5-year plan, I'll just briefly run through what we're doing. So the plan in 2022 would be to do microsurfacing in ADA improvements in Meadow Ridge Villas, resurfacing on stretch of Denny Road from Bliss to the entrance of Bliss Woods, and then resurface the rest of Mount Point and Rolling Oaks subdivision. 2023 would be to resurface the remaining parts of Winter Point that didn't get addressed this year. 2024 would be just to do microsurfacing on Galena and Municipal between 47 and 30. 2025 would be to do a resurfacing program in Whinstone, and then all the STP projects are shown. One thing to note with those STP projects are those are still subject for funding. They've been applied for, but the village is still waiting to see if they've received funds. So that would be this section of Blue Road here, Norris Road, Prairie Street, and Main Street. And then the last year would be 2026, which would be microsurfacing in Hannaford Farms and Prairie Wood. So that's the proposed 5-year program. It's got a good mixture of resurfacing and what we would say is preventative maintenance, which would be microsurfacing. And this slide is just kind of a detail that shows what we're doing in each year. And then each year we do a miscellaneous set aside for various crack sealing and patching throughout the village too. So that's more preventative maintenance that we're doing as well. And then you can see in a year projects programmed in. So those projects receive 75-25 split typically for construction and construction engineering, and then the design engineering would be 100% on the village for those projects.
And we recognize this is really small, but that the actual page is in your handout, so it's just a way to look at your handout.
So those projects are on the contingency list right now. There's a new call for projects coming out in January. All those projects will be resubmitted again, and there's a potential we could identify additional projects as well.
Look, keep that page up there. So looking at year 3.
Yeah.
You've got surplus of 700,000.
Correct.
Why are we?
So the reason the surplus is there is to do a bigger project in year 4. So instead of splitting up Windstone subdivision, say, in multiple years, you're better off trying to get it all glued together in 1 year and get done and get better unit prices, and then you only have to disturb the residents one time. So that's why there's a smaller program in year 3 to do a bigger program in year 4. So you can see there's a surplus in year 3 of 710,000, and there's actually a deficit in year 4 because we're kind of borrowing against future funds, but then it's a smaller program in year 5 to make that back up. And then I would probably, if there was a year 6 on this page, it would be a bigger program to use some of that surplus.
Thank you.
So just a quick kind of budget review. So the kind of where the funds come from. So the dark green is the MFT funds. Those come every year. They do fluctuate a little bit because it's based on gas sales in the state. In 2023, there's a one-time rebuild online capital bill that the village receives 6 separate installments. So that's what's allowing the village to do a bigger program in 2023. There's the annual road maintenance fee, which is the on your water, you get on your water bill. There's the STP grant funds, which is all shown in 2025 right now. And then the last thing is that light green would be the non-home rule sales tax, whatever's left over from the bond payment and salt. And you can see in 2026 that portion of that gets bigger because I believe the bonds will be paid off or starting to be paid off, correct? This shows how the money is being spent between resurfacing, microservicing, and crack sealing and patching. Just basically preventative maintenance versus resurfacing. And then here is a slide that shows the total revenues are in green, the total expenditures are in red. So you can see some years we're not spending all the revenue, but it kind of balances out. And this black line shows how the cash flow works. You'll have a big surplus and a deficit that go back up. I think the important thing here to note is this is where we were spending, the 794. This is what we're, according to plan on spending was the 1.45, but also note that it's still slightly below that 1.7 million that was kind of recommended to maintain the current condition. So we're making strides towards maintaining our stuff, but still just a little bit below that annual expenditure. So what are the next steps? Continue to monitor the roadway conditions. We recommend doing an update to the pavement management study. Updating the software and the program every year to update what has been completed and age your streets every year, but also do a reassessment of the streets every 3 to 5 years. More on the 5-year ends because the data starts to get old as you get further out. So you want to go and basically restart over and re-evaluate all your streets using the same process that was used this past time by CMAQ. Continue submissions for federally funded cost sharing opportunities on the major roadways, and then try to identify additional funding sources or any ways to generate additional revenue to try and start to close up that current funding gap between what was recommended and what is currently proposed. That's what kind of long-term next steps. Short-term would be consider the proposed engineering agreement for the 2021 road program, which would allow us to start going out to inspect the streets in anticipation for letting the project in March. to construct the project in the summer of 2022. So thank you for your time, and then let me know if you have any questions or comments.
Thanks, Fred. Okay. Tony, do you have anything you wanted to add?
So with that presentation, as Chris pointed out, there's that piece of Denny Road section just west of 47 that we want to resurface. Cobbler Lane and Court, resurfacing and Rolling Oak subdivision, microservicing in Meadow Ridge Village, including ADA improvements and some patching and crack sealing. The total estimated cost for the 2022 road program, including engineering, is $700,000. So tonight what we have is the professional services agreement with EEI to do the engineering to move our program forward for approval in the amount of $92,613.
Is that 92,000 in the 700? It is. Okay.
Yes.
I know that we earmarked dollars, right, for engineering.
Yeah, so if I can kind of go
Yeah.
through this.
Yeah, please.
Just so, because it is going to be something that I think going forward we're going to present every year is what's the next 5 years look like. And to kind of explain the fund balance portion or the surplus deficit of each year. So after this entire 5-year program, what it's showing is that $441,000. So over a 5-year plan, we will have $441,000 in a surplus doing this entire 5-year program. So we may have higher surpluses in 1 year and a deficit in another year, but by the end of that program, we are now going to be spending more money than we're operating in. And that's what this is going to show every year to make sure the board is aware. We may be borrowing some fund balance for a larger year, but by the end of it, if it's in the green, it means that over those years we brought in more revenue than that actual plan is going to be presented. So that flows through how we determine the revenues for each year, as well as if that plan will work for a company. So this current program presented for 5 years will be able to be done with the current revenue that we have. What this does show, we do not use any existing fund balance to fund any of these projects. So the actual fund balance that is there currently is still there. So we don't take any of that money to do that program. So the earmark money that we have transferred in prior years is still sitting there. That is not part of this plan as a revenue source. So that is still there. I also want to kind of talk about just that, what he had said is that we have an average over the 5 years of $1.458 million, which obviously he said is a little bit lower than 1.7, but better than what we're currently doing. So just to kind of explain that, because will be presented each year as part of this presentation annually, so that you can see what a 5-year plan would look like, and if what we're presenting makes sense, and we have the money as ongoing revenue to do that. So this will be a document that you're going to see more often. And will be updated as we go. Obviously the STD stuff will have to be updated because that initially was at an 80-20. So that's going to affect this 441 number at the end. Because that's what I was given at the time when I did this, was that the STD ones were at 80-20 split, not at 75-20.
Okay.
So I will adjust the cost and the amount coming in.
Okay.
So it'll kind of be a working program that we're going to update every single year for 5 years.
I'm sorry, hold on. Trustee White has a question.
Matt, is the work that would happen on the S20 related to
Would be this.
so we could save some money there from that fund, because we have the rights in.
I know, but do we want to get into that debate right now? It's a good question. I don't wanna debate it with you, but it's something that we should address. Because I think as we go into the rest of the evening, when we discuss, mid-year budget update, and I don't know that, well, I can go back and look, but TIP was part of that too in the update. So I did wanna discuss TIPs this evening, because we do have a budget, $50,000 surplus, that we have earmarked or budgeted to do this year out of TIP 2, TIP 1. We just name them something else. So, we'll get to that.
And then the last thing is the non-overall sales tax that says excess of salt and bond. So with the change in the state law and how sales tax is being collected now, there was a large increase that you're gonna see in the budget update as well. So what I did is I took that amount that we're projecting this year, only did a 1% increase year to year, and then subtracted salt and how much we would be paying for the bond. So that is truly an excess on top of paying for the salt. That was a discussion of how do we fund that as well. So there's now enough funds to fund the salt, the bond payment, and excess for the bond.
Fabulous. Early Christmas present. Okay. So with this being said, I mean, I know we have this up right now under general business, but my question goes back to the fact that we did earmark dollars for engineering. I'm not quite sure that tapping into that fund balance of $92,000 will make a difference in how it changes our road program going forward on such a small dollar amount. I guess it would beg the question, if we did tap into that, which has been money earmarked for basically roads and engineering, would we be able to get, what else would we be able to do? Let's see what we do. I think so. That would be in year 2. I mean, year 2 is earmarked at 1.4, so I don't see a small dollar amount unless staff has any ideas as to how to add another $100,000 to the road program.
The only thing I'll say is that we have approved some items out of that 150. We're currently paying that phase, I don't know if we call it phase 1, but the crosswalk.
Okay.
That feasibility is coming out of there that we've already talked about.
Okay.
There is some extra engineering that we're doing with Ballard for the work that IDOT is doing, so there is some expenses coming out of that. And then I know we've talked about if that goes through on the crosswalk, not using it as engineering, but using it to fund that.
Okay.
So I don't want to say no, but at the time we kind of discussed using those funds for other items.
Got it. Does anyone have any discussion relative to approval of the professional services agreement for the road program for 2022 specifically?
The only comment that I have in looking at the rate sheet compared to 4 or 5 months ago when we were looking at this for some other program, not that it's going to change anything, it is what it is, it's what's happening in the market. It looks like the rates have gone up some from the last time. I'm going by memory, and that's not critical. We're getting a lot of price pressure in where I work from our engineering services providers as well. But yeah, it's just a general comment. It's not a question. It's not an accusation. It's a statement of fact of where things are at right now.
Those are our 2021 rates. I believe consistent with the contract, and we'll start with the 2022 rates. We try to keep it to the 2021 rates because if you look at Social Security and the federal inflation rate, it's a 5.9% increase. So we really try to hold those 2021 rates for this one season of our project.
Yeah. So you're suggesting that would make it a little more prudent for us to approve it now instead of letting it go into next year?
I'm not threatening that. I'm not saying we would hold those 2021 rates. I'm just saying it's the nature of the times. And we've already issued the 2022 rates because that's when work's being performed.
It's good to be an engineer right now.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Any other discussion relative to the engineering for the road program? Okay. Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the resolution for the professional services agreement for the 2022 road program?
As stated.
Thank you.
Second.
First by trustee Shomas and a second under trustee Karen. Roll call, please, Allison.
Trustee Shomas?
Aye.
Trustee Karen?
Aye.
Trustee Lindy? Trustee Bonnie?
Aye.
Trustee White?
Motion passes. Thank you.
I would like to thank Matt, because this spreadsheet is all Matt, that's why it actually makes sense.
And you know what? It's really easy to understand as well. It's not just currently where we are, but where we're going and how we're getting there. And at the end of all of this, we still have money.
That's what I was hoping.
Yeah, no, it's great.
In the finance, and I understand it.
Yeah, no, it's great. Thank you. So, and thank you for pointing that out. I don't know what page it falls in. I don't want to lose my place there. Okay, up next we have public comment. Anything and everything that you would like to discuss. Are there any public comments, Mr. Wolf?
Yes. There's going to be difficulties for the village to negotiate agreements with developers. One thing, you're too small, and you haven't been growing. And the other thing is to have 7 negotiators talking to the developer with 7 ideas that are perfect. Just doesn't work. You don't get a perfect thing in negotiation. You don't even usually get what you want. So you shouldn't really have that type of system. You don't have that system in your business world, so it doesn't work here. I would suggest that you set the conditions as a board, but allow the president and the staff who know the market to see what's available. You won't end up with perfect agreements. You probably won't even end up with what most of you agree is a good agreement. What you end up with is an agreement that reflects the economy that is there today, and that's about what you're going to get. You're not going to get the Macy's type of thing. You'll probably end up with the dollar stores type of thing. And that's just an example. But I think it's possible to do it, but, you know, it's really a developer's world right now, and you have to adjust to that. So, you know, I've been sitting in the boardroom for 20 years, watching you negotiate, and I haven't seen where it's a very efficient way to do it. I'm just suggesting something that might work. You might try it, see how it works. It won't satisfy you, but I think it's what's out there. So I would like to thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Joe. Do we have any additional public comments at this time? Going once? Going twice? So we are moving on to public comment. We'll close that portion. Up next, under discussion items, we have the mid-year budget update. Matt.
Yes, all right, so we will go through the entire budget, giving highlights for 3 or 6 months, and then actual projections for the end of the year. So beginning with the general fund, we are expecting general fund revenues to actually be above budget by $673,000. There is a small amount attributed to the ARPA fund that acts about $50,000 of that, which is kind of a unique revenue source. And expenditures are actually budgeted to be and projected to be lower by budget by about $3,600. So with these changes, we already projected or budgeted a surplus of $22,000. So we're looking at a surplus of about $699,000 for the year, based on projections. get into how we get there as we go through. So the first item, which I want to talk about, is kind of one-time revenue that we cannot contribute to next year future budgets. Just this is a one-off for this year. A large amount is about $65,000 for the depot permit. That was not a budgeted item. $50,000 for the ARPA funds, and then we did apply for a FEMA grant. I applied back in July of 2020, and we just got it in May of 2021 for $4,800. So those are kind of one-time items that total about $119,000. There are quite a few revenues that we project going forward in future budgets, mainly income tax, sales tax, and video gaming for the most part. So as we get to that next page, on page 52, we're going to talk about revenues and expenditures of the general fund. Utility tax continues to decrease year after year. That's strictly due to people not having actual phone plans, it's more data plans. So we're going to continue to see that to decrease every year. Like I said, building permits slightly above the addition of D code, so about $16,000 above that. But in total, it's about $80,000 above budget. Income tax, this is a large one that's ongoing, about $167,000. All the projections kind of haven't changed with COVID. Everyone's been very conservative on their budgeting with income tax, with everything for unemployment, but it has continued to increase. So that's kind of a guaranteed revenue source that we're going to be getting in years coming forward. Grants, again, that was about $55,000 over. That was $50,000 in ARPA and about $4,900 to the FEMA grant. Sales tax, that is going to be an ongoing thing. This is a huge change from how the state collected sales from outside of the state of Illinois. It used to be considered use tax. They changed it now to point of delivery. So when somebody buys it from Amazon and it's coming from Minnesota, it used to be considered a use tax. Now it's considered sales tax because it's being delivered to Sugar Grove or wherever. So anybody that's buying online now actually gets the sales tax attributed to your actual use amount. They were unsure on how that was going to affect, so everyone said kind of budget less for use tax and the same amount for sales tax, and this is one out. Obviously, it's all based on who's purchasing stuff within your municipality. So month to month, we're seeing anywhere from 20 to 30% increase in sales tax because of online usage. So this is a constant increase in revenue that we're going to see on an annual basis, and that's also flows through on the infrastructure side that I had discussed with the nominal. So that's about $264,000 higher than budgeted, and I would say that's still conservative. That's just me being conservative on all the revenues, but that's still a large number. Between those two, you're at $420,000 with income tax and sales tax. And we also did not see any decreases with COVID. We've actually seen an increase because of our business days. We don't have the businesses that were shutting down. So we had the grocers that were actually seeing increases and those items. So, like I said, use tax was affected because of that sales tax change, but that actually only decreased about $50,000. Gaming has pretty much doubled what our projections or what our budget was. We're seeing in the upwards of $8,000 to $9,000 a month in video games.
Did you budget 2021 down because of COVID?
I left it the same, yes,
okay,
because we were unsure on how things were going. But it wasn't much less than we were budgeting originally 2 years before.
Okay.
With the new law change, adding another terminal helped. That allowed people to have 6 instead of 5, and so you're seeing more play, which means the village sees more money. And then reimbursement kind of is an offset. Reimbursement's going to go up when you have your expenses going up, so they're kind of directly related. Engineering and legal will go up because they're mainly related to developer costs that we're getting reimbursed. Any questions on revenues?
Any questions? Looks good. Just comments.
Yeah, so general fund expenditures, kind of a budget light update. Medical and dental, we budgeted for a 10% increase, we came in at about 8.1. IMRF budgeted at 8.25, there was a decrease to 6.56, and that was due to a large rate of return investment that over the 5 years that they blended, there was a couple of 16 to 19% returns. And then in here, the equipment replacement fund initially was budgeted at 50%. The numbers that you're seeing and the surplus you're seeing has already increased that to 100%. So that 699,000 number already includes 100% funding rather than 50%. Getting into each department a little bit, legal services for administration is over budget. In the beginning of the year, we were having meetings multiple times a month additional, so there was additional legal fees and there was just a lot of those types of needed expenses. So that kind of obviously has tapered down with just normal meetings. So other professional services is lower by a little bit just because a lobbyist was budgeted for and not approved or hired. Going to page 53, police department salaries for full-time regular is projected under budget between the turnover and the open patrol position and a sergeant promotion. That's kind of the net effect of everything. Salaries for part-time is slightly below, and that's due to not a lot of time off, but it's still conservative on using the budget. Public works, solid waste control is 0. We move that into the infrastructure fund. Community development, so salaries for full-time is going to be over budget. That is based on the addition of economic development director position that was that's posted for. In future budgets, we will be creating an economic development department, so you will see all those expenses broken out now in community development. Just with this year, the approved budget is we can't add a department. Legal services and engineering services are both over. Again, those are developer reimbursed. And then there is the other professional services. That's going to be over by about $77,000. And $30,000 of that is from shopping design work in the beginning of the year. That is not reimbursable. And then there's about $33,000 of additional planning services, consultants, that is reimbursable for mowing violations, etc. that we're doing. So that is reimbursable. Any questions on those expenditures?
No.
So then the next question is what do we do with those surplus funds? And if I could, I would like to kind of go through them and then finish the rest of the update, and then we'll come back to discuss these items at the end of that discussion.
Sounds good.
So like I said, there's a $699,000 projected surplus. Of that, about $450 is ongoing recurring revenues, and about $250,000 of one-time revenues kind of throughout the budget. So what we did is develop one-time expenses and projections, and then what some future items can be that we can use the additional ongoing revenues. So some one-time purchases and project options is kind of completing the office furniture and village hall finishes. Traffic signal lookouts, stop signs at all the intersections, all subdivision entrance signs for overnight parking and snow regulations, new projector for here in the boardroom, our laserfish document management program, a large print scanner and plotter for community development, Blackberry Creek Phase 2 and 3 engineering and construction, just a transfer to Fund 30 for Village Hall future down payment. We cannot use our ARMA reserve credit that we use generally, and that would just increase the reserves on hand with ARMA that we can use for future premiums. And then a transfer to an infrastructure fund for a future road program. And then there's one that's out here that where I want to leave right now. And during Carrie's presentation of what could be needed out in public works or in community development, was that community development is not on any of the signs at public works building, so whether it's that entrance sign as you come in or the doors. So we put in a number of $2,000 to add community development to the sign at public works and on the doors. That's not on this list. And then that's kind of the one-time project items, and then the ongoing stuff for that 450 that we kind of feel is a comfortable number for future budgets. First on the list is hire the police officer replacement. That's one of the vacancies for 3 years. Village Hall debt service. That's kind of an ongoing expense that we could use the money for. Mallard Point controlled burn, which would be on a 3-year cycle, not an annual cycle. And then seal coating the village owned walking paths. So then I'm going to finish this, and we'll come back to discuss each of those things. So to kind of go into general capital projects, which is our equipment replacement and vehicles, is projected to be up by 150. That's due to increasing from 50% funding to 100% funding. And then we do have one-time income in there. That was from the accident that we got that claim from Irma for, so there was a reimbursement for that. Okay. TIF 1, the revenues are above budget by about $79,000. It sounds like a lot, but it's actually because it was budgeted less surplus. And since then, with our auditors, they've discussed that they want that to be shown as a expense rather than a revenue reduction. So really look at it as about $29,000 above what we budgeted. And the only expenses right now is the cemetery super and the surplus. TIF 2 is above budget by about $13,000 for revenues, and the expenses are under budget by $4,000 to nothing really happening in that the current moment. Getting into capital infrastructure fund 35, we're looking at a surplus of about $390,000, and that's directly due to the increase in sales tax for non-renewable. And then there was also a reduction in engineering expenses versus what we budgeted. The village is to receive the final payment of the $592,000 by the end of next year, and that money is part of the road program that was just presented for that fiscal year. Sugar Road SSA 10, we budgeted $8,000 for weed control and grass cutting. It's again, we didn't levy taxes for tax year 21, 22. We have about 3 years left based on this projection. So still not have to levy any taxes unless something drastic happens. So water and sewer fund revenues are expected to be slightly below $19,000. There has been a lot of calls on water conservation. People are recognizing their water softeners, irrigation systems, and how much that they actually use. So not a huge difference, but we are getting a lot of calls on those when people are calling. In administration, it'll be under budget. The accounting manager position was not filled for 12 months. And then also part-time utility billing clerk basically has been vacant since the end of May. So that position is not currently filled. Within water operations, electricity is going to be over by about $8,000, and the valve maintenance program is $25,000 under budget. In water capital, it'll be under about $58,000 due to the actual cost to replace the utility truck and engineering under budget for the projects we are currently doing. The main one is the water system study. We budgeted $200,000. It came in at about $100,000. So in total, it's the water fund projected a surplus of about $197,000, which is about $118,000 over what we budgeted. This does include a decrease of water rates by 3% as well
Good news.
Going into the water and sewer capital fund that was created. This is where we have put the remaining ARPA funds, as we have discussed, and we will discuss tonight as well. What those funds can be used for, majority is water and sewer projects. So anything that we can in the general fund as we go through the months is used, whether that's masks or COVID payroll items that are eligible. We are using it, it's very minimal, but the majority is sitting in the water capital fund for that future project that we're going to discuss after this. This does include a $975,000 transfer from the water fund. $850 is for infrastructure, which was the project that Jimmy Woods, and then $125,000, which is an annual thing for the water meter replacement program, and that's for a 10-year program, and that's just a constant ongoing thing. There were two expenses in there this year, which is the first expenses in this fund, and that's phase 1 of the new water meter replacement, and then also the 50% painting of the public works building, which both came under. And then the last is refuse fund. These are going to be very close. It's going to surplus $7,800. That gets us to about 12% in the reserve, and our reserve policy is 12.5%. So we're right at that reserve. So are there any questions on the remaining funds before we kind of go back?
I just want to discuss the water and sewer capital projects fund. So the $975,000 transfer for infrastructure, that's for Dugan, right?
150 of that is for Dugan, 125 is for the water meter replacement program.
Okay.
Which is a 10-year program that we estimated at 1.25. So we just do 10, we divide that by 10 and do it for 10 years, and then we should have the funds available in that capital project fund.
And I know it's next, but the ARPA funds,
Yes.
where is that money sitting right now?
It's in this water sewer capital fund.
It is in there. Okay.
And this fund also has any transfers that we're doing for vehicles anyway.
Okay. Are there any questions on the other funds before we go back to general? Hearing none, let's talk about the one-time purchases. And then we'll get into the ongoing options. So, Matt?
First item is office furniture and village hall finish off. Or probably a scene, painted and moving department in the main portion of finance and administration, but now that that's done, there's some missing pieces, mainly the conference room, and then painting of the Roy's office in the back that was not completed, that was carpeted, just not painted. And then replacement of the conference room table and chairs, the break room table and chairs, and then chairs for the officers in the police department. So that kind of encompasses in this 30 to 40,000, and that's what comes into that 30 to 40,000.
Are you watching these? I'm like,
No.
Okay.
Trustee Bonnie wants new chairs here too.
Well,
just for me.
he did mention that. He's going to have, walk in a little bit crooked. Just
lean in the middle of it.
how old are these chairs, by the way?
20 depends.
It depends. It's a good answer.
20.
Yours looks new.
Well, there you go, Matt. I don't know.
Just get here before
I'm
I.
here now.
No?
They've been replaced. They're not, if you've ever looked at chairs, chairs are expensive. So these were never the highest grade chairs to begin with. And, I believe we're, from the police side, we're talking about $1,500 a chair for,
$12.50.
$12.50, is that what we're at?
$12.50.
Because over there, more so than here, with the equipment they wear and everything, if you got a chance to walk into the back where the officers, go in and out every day, 3 shifts a day,
I just went in there, and by the way, I encourage tours on a regular basis, because what we don't know, we don't know. And then you walk there, I don't know who sits in the chair with the screw in the back, but.
Depends on who did something chief didn't like that.
Yeah, that's sad. But, yeah, we did get a number back on, with a lifetime warranty on the chair as well, of $1,250 for. And they said, the person I spoke to said it's the same chair that they outfitted the Aurora Police Department with when they redid their building, when they built the building.
They're next year.
So there you go.
Well worth it.
I was gonna ask you, as we're talking, I'm like, oh, that's right, he said, and I was gonna ask
What
you.
was the number, I'm sure?
It was, all steel number 19. Is the chair.
Yeah, I know, okay. I'll start bringing that over here.
And honestly,
I'm sure it's probably 20.
and just for the record, the company did say that they would bring in the chairs that we were thinking about for the boardroom, or the conference room, and I'm sure we can get the chair for the police officers, you know, as a sample, if you will, to test drive. Okay, sorry. So that was, we're, you know, Chief, you're gonna have to decide how many chairs you need. We kind of went over there and we're trying to count them, but just yours. Now that saves us quite a bit. So I just ran some numbers, and unless I'm missing anything, you're talking about carpeting, table and chairs, table in the break room. They have like a old school table that they've been getting by with, so proposed maybe a round table in there with some, you know, chairs around it. Just, I have that at about $24,250. And that's with the carpeting. That's with the carpeting. My number's with the carpeting.
At the time I was using 2,000 for his share of that 10, so I don't know how many, but.
I just did 10 at $12.50.
Yeah, when I was using my number, it was about 30, which makes sense. Losing 7,500 from my house.
And I think there's some room, so we did get a proposal, there's some room in the proposed right now, whether it can happen or not, is the conference room table proposed with outlets in the table, so that if someone obviously has a laptop or has a meeting, they can tie in and power source. The challenge with that is that we only have wall units, and so I believe Brad is working to get a quote to see what it would, when they rip the carpeting up, to replace the carpeting, to make a channel to set the in-floor outlet. So all in all, I mean, I don't know. This is so dated, and when you're having professional meetings, it sets a tone out of the gate, and I think the tone that we've set is that we're antiquated, and we need to freshen ourselves up a bit. So, I don't know how you all feel about spending that money. I mean, we have.
I quite frankly tried to get, I got to the chief, I said, Chief, what else do you need? I mean, those guys in there. I mean, I just feel so bad for them.
Yeah.
Because you're right, once you go through it, you don't realize it. And also, if there's anything else in there, I'm 100% behind.
What
Luxury
can,
for our office.
Yeah.
Not even luxury.
Yeah. It is. I mean,
Right.
and kudos to them. Maybe you hear about it, but it has never gotten back to us, and so it's not like they're squeaky wheels complaining about the conditions of the things that they have, and they've just dealt with it. But yeah, we can't fix what we don't know about. That's for sure.
And I think part of it, as you go through the list tonight, certainly some of the things that you're in favor of are relatively simple.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we could move on those, but it's not like final decisions on everything have to be made tonight. So as we go through this, it's like, you know what, there are a couple other things over there that really need to be done. We can always come back and talk about those.
Yeah. Well, did you do a running total on these one-time purchases, Matt?
I did it just because it was kind of like throwing together a quick list.
Okay.
Things. I guess yeah, we were just looking for more discussion, consensus on some, but it doesn't have to be if it's not.
Okay. Well, it sounds like, are you all in agreement with updating the
yes,
things that we need to do? Conference room, chairs for the police department, the carpeting in here. we're gonna have to threshold cut up, because obviously we're not replacing this room, right? So we'll have to do some sort of threshold.
The rental buildings with office furniture too, conference room. The chair that's missing.
Are you missing stuff over there, as a tenant, that you need?
I think when you sign that, I think when they sign that, all the furniture was there. That's what happened.
Some people even brought in extra.
It's not Jamie's den.
All right, sounds like we're good to move forward on some of those items. Traffic signal, flip down stop signs, Chief.
So, currently we had the last improvements that happened at Bliss and Sugar Grove Parkway, there are folding stop signs, so when the traffic lights go out, we can open up the stop sign so that it's obviously safer for vehicles entering the intersection and they'll have some type of traffic control. And also if we had a couple incidences where we get 3 traffic lights go out at once, we don't have enough manpower to staff those intersections. So it's been a dire need, we just never had the funding for it. And, you know, we've, Brad was able to get, seems like a very good price on it. You know, but eventually we'll have to have a couple on hand because we'll get a traffic light knocked over. We're responsible for the stop signs, it's not part of something that I provides.
Is this a firm number that you, based on how many stop signs we need? Okay.
This is a no-brainer.
Okay, good. I'm glad everybody agree with that. Is life safety issue? Yeah. Okay.
I did just total that all these right now minus the transfers equals about 183,000.
Okay.
Again, but that includes not using a credit of $57,000, like half of $50,000.
Right.
So really 107,000 is kind of big picture. The other stuff is totaling about 70,000.
Okay. And did you use the 30 or the 40 in the village?
I just used 40.
Okay. So there's probably room to say, we'll see as we go, but.
Yeah. I used the 40 just because of the discussion if you figure something else
Okay.
over there. I used the 40 number.
It's expensive.
Yeah.
Subdivision entrance signs for the overnight parking and snow regulations.
So this came from us, Tony and myself, and someone else, but we share design signs at every entrance to our subdivision, where it's parking 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. and after 2 days of snow. There's some verbiage that's missing because everyone just thinks when you mean you're parking near that sign or underneath that sign. It never says all our streets. So we have been for a long time saying we gotta get these signs replaced because we've had people come to the police station. That's not where,
Right.
It's a dance. So we would like to update the signs. It's typical for signs and stuff. And they've been there forever. So we're asking to replace all the subdivision entrance signs with the new verbiage, and for a very low price. For all the signs.
Well, this is fun. Yeah, goodness we can do it.
It's pretty impressive because we've been dancing around this for quite a while because it was this low to get replaced. So just do it.
Everybody's good?
We're associated with doing it, the signs themselves are fairly cheap.
Good to go. Another check mark. New projector for the boardroom. Allison.
So this will replace our wonderful setup here. It will be ceiling mounted and more wireless, so get rid of a lot of this. And that includes the electric and the mounting, and it will be a better projector. So it will be clearer, a bit more high def. We should have a better viewing experience.
I think probably 2/3 of that price if it's just in the installation.
Yeah, it was
The
about.
projectors aren't expensive by itself, getting them mounted is where the cost is.
I mean,
Can we move it to the new building?
well, Chief might need it though. It might be useful here. You know what I mean?
We can take this.
I mean, if they need to.
I thought that was going to the tenant building.
But good point, but I think it would be useful. I don't imagine you can do training videos or whatever you need to do on that projector, so. Yeah, so it still has a use. Okay, everybody good with that one?
Yes. I can't believe.
So, a lot of this list is long overdue and
Oh,
great.
yeah, this wasn't like a crazy wish list.
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
like
yeah,
one of the
no,
things
this
for
is-
years we've been talking about, never had a chance.
I'm gonna give this one to you as well, Allison, the Laserfiche document management program. I think you've been working on that with Matt.
Yes, so this will help us, twofold. One, to, get our electronic files organized, scannable, searchable from, now you have to know what it's named. This will be like you put in a keyword, boom, there it is. And it also will help us with, document management flow. So, it'll connect with VSNA, our accounting software, to help digitize that. And then eventually we can start doing some other workflows and stuff, but.
Can you do digital signing with it and that sort of stuff with the software?
I'm not sure.
It's an option.
Yeah.
It's an extra cost.
Oh, yeah, it's software. Everything's an option.
Yeah.
And so with the integration with VSNA, that'd be another expense that I'd bring back later.
Yeah.
Essentially, this is to get us
going.
going.
We currently have Laserfiche, apparently.
It's not me.
It's just a piece of software. This is the cloud. And this will help us tremendously when anybody asks for anything, for me to find it.
Does it interface with with Office and Teams and the other stuff like that?
So I don't know about that. It will interface with our website eventually, and kind of once it's all there, kind of be like our code where people can go research or search things that are out there. That's a piece of this is once you get the actual.
So it's got a Java front door, so it'll interface with anything.
Yeah.
That's what that means.
And essentially even with BSNA, there'll be a screen that we can pull from utility billing, AP. It just makes everything together and not searching. Where if you don't know the title of the actual saved document, not the actual document itself, we can't find it. This will actually turn all of these into searchable documents. So if you know a keyword, it'll pull you all the documents that have that word in the actual file. So it's getting everything going, and again, going back to what we've talked about, that new village hall proposal is reducing that storage space.
Right.
This is going to reduce our storage space as long as we get it out there. We don't need the paper.
If I'm correct, this is on our approved initiative list, but we essentially postponed it till next year because we didn't have the budget dollars to do this.
Correct. Yes.
So we get to handle it.
Would this help with the FOIA requests, things like that? Is it like everything that we're putting on there?
Oh,
Yeah.
Over time.
over time.
Over time, yes.
So great.
This is
So we'll start with ordinances and resolutions. We're doing some prep work for that now, making sure we have all of them. Here they are. And then yes, and eventually you just can shove more stuff into it and get up to speed.
And essentially it's going to help the residents out as well, because all these forms that we have, just utility billing side, whether it's a snowbird form or a direct debit form, this will be able to create those forms online and they can fill the document out of them. So any type of thing, if we have any applications, it makes those fillable online.
Okay.
So it kind of just makes everything less paper-centric and more digital. But this proposal is just the actual software.
All right, that was my next question, because
So it's not.
the integration, the training, and all that sort of stuff.
That's in this. But it doesn't include, this includes us doing all the work. There is an option that somebody could help come do all of the.
We might want to consider.
But that's not this. I will tell you, this is us doing all the work.
Does Rachel have time to?
So we can handle what we're going to need to get up to speed. And yes, Rachel is a big part of this. She's working on the backbone for the bare bones right now, getting ordinances right. We should have this many. We might not know where they all are, so we're finding that, and then we have to put that in there. So yeah, this is going to be a big part of Rachel's records management job.
And then I guess we cross that bridge after we know that we've utilized her.
Baby steps.
Yeah.
I think the big thing you're gonna want is I've been involved in a lot of these things in my career. You don't wanna start taking a path somewhere, find out 6 months from now, God dang it, if only we would have done this, we gotta undo a bunch of stuff. I would highly recommend investigating if the software supplier has a consulting services, either web or in person, to do some initial coaching and framework. This is strategically how you want to set that stuff
So
up.
this includes that.
Okay.
What I was saying is it doesn't include them sending 3 people out to help us scan our current files into it, but we do have training and help on the mapping side of it, and how we want to set up that document.
Structure.
So that is included in this.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody else? Good.
This goes in the category of if we're going to be doing business with the big boys.
Well, and I just want to give credit to Allison, because I catch it here and there, and obviously I'm not in the office daily, but I know that when I talk to Matt, you have been organizing and unburying archives and purging, and this kind of goes along with that, and just the cleaning and organizing of everything village-wide, she's kind of been handling and doing a great job, so.
Thank you. And it also helps with our records management, because, we can dispose of things in certain ways, even if they're electronic. And this, you can tag that in the document. You can say, instead of writing it on a box and sticking it in the back and then us finding the box,
Right.
It's, hey, these are the records that are up for destruction. We put in the request and we give them. So it helps with just organizing our archives.
When you scan a document, you put in destruction, and it notifies you.
When it's out.
You can destroy this, and then you basically just make sure it's certified and you delete it.
Excellent.
So,
That's excellent.
there's just a lot of efficiencies for us.
Well, look at that. We're good with that. Large printer scanner plotter, Walter.
Yes.
I'm laughing because if you approve this, somebody may need to be standing by the AED. How many years have you been asking this?
Well, it's been a mission of mine since I came here, is to digitize all our records. We've, as the technology's improved, we get more and more submissions electronically, which is great. But we have, if anybody's visited the CD office, we have, let's just say, several feet of storage devoted to files that are, basically sheets as big as what you see here that take up space. We can scan them and free up all that space and have the information readily available to anybody who wants it. And it's not just plans. We also have building plans and other information like that that's sitting in file shelves, taking up space. That I think that we'd all be better served if it was available electronically. It'd be much easier to get and access and organize.
Now, with the change, you mentioned change in technology. This printer, is this a purchase price? Is this a lease? Obviously, if things change, I don't even know what the cost is, but are we better off trying to lease this piece of equipment over?
Actually, I've been in contact with a vendor, and in my opinion, the desired machine we can get for significantly less than $12,500. And as far as whether or not we should buy it or lease it, 6 of one, half a dozen the other, because this vendor, the price is the same whether we lease it or buy it. I guess the advantage is if we lease it at the end of the 3-year lease, okay, we'll have to buy another one, and we'll get the latest and greatest technology at that time. Given how much plotting or printing I foresee us doing, that is not a concern of mine. The primary purpose of this machine is going to be scanning.
And doing and eliminating all of the
Right.
storage, hopefully.
Right.
Okay.
Are you looking at HP?
I'm sorry, what?
Are you looking at HP? What brand? I was just curious.
What was it? think it was Canada.
Do you have any experience, Heidi, with one over another?
I have personally owned two plotters. One of them I have to get rid of because apparently after 20 years, they no longer make even the cartridge pins anymore, not even the manufactured one, you know. The plotter works great, but I can't get ink for it.
Right.
So.
Does it scan too?
Mine does not scan.
No, but one of the things that leasing will get you on these things is a maintenance contract.
That's what I was gonna ask, because I work for, firms that have good ones, and they usually do have a maintenance contract, but they're not that much anymore. But I know one that, the company I work for, they did have a maintenance plan, because, I mean, if it broke, and they're expensive to fix, which I have.
The scanning is still motorized, you're feeding it into a scanner, so that's all.
You're just running it through, and someone has to be there to do it, you can't do an automatic one.
Those are all things that can break, they're wearable items.
They are, because you got moving parts.
Once it's scanned and saved, if they ever do need to print, they can now reprint that document without having to hold all this storage.
That is correct.
Absolutely need to scan the document. Goodness knows I need to. I have a couple closets full.
Do we need to provide something for somebody to come in and do that?
Hours.
The labor.
I think, Walter, if I understand, the idea would be to get it up and running over the next few months, kind of see how it goes, if you will. Then we may be back saying, okay, this is going to take way too long. And in the background, one of the conversations we've had is as we looked at sizing a new village hall and bringing community development into it, is to not bringing over their files. Like Walter said, if you get a chance to go up there, I don't know how many of those, whatever they are, 12, 15 feet long rolling files are all CD files. I think you have essentially a file on every address in the village. Building permit for that, that's just part of what they have. So we've talked about in that, depending upon the timing and how long this takes. Yeah, we may have to use either bringing somebody in or ship it out, however it's done.
You can
box
send
it
it
up
out to a service,
yeah.
but that gets kind of pricey, I think.
So then basically, if you're thinking just moving going forward, then not necessarily going back.
Well, eventually, no, we would like to go back, but I think.
Well, not yet.
Yeah.
Well, I think, let's assume this, if we get this up and running in January, I think, as your staff allows, you're gonna have, Holly, whoever, start working through the most important things first, and that'll give us a better idea of how many hours it would really take to be able to say, we can get this wrapped up in, 18 months on side things, maybe that's okay, or if this will take us 15 years, we gotta.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I don't want to overburden already overburden.
Yes, understood.
Yeah.
Will the document management software interface with the scan and CAD drawings to be stored in the network? And
Yeah, so essentially anything that's PDF-ed from the scan is going to go into this management system. So essentially every address in the village is not only going to have utility building stuff linked to it, we're going to be able to see building stuff linked to it. Now we're not looking at different folders or different systems. It's all going to be linked to every address within the village. And currently, along with Allison, Cheryl has been taking every physical utility billing file and scanning that into BSNA so that it's there already and we're getting rid of the paper. So she's probably through a file cabinet and a half, but it's just as she has time, she's been scanning it already so that it's in BSNA. So when we do it, it's kind of just pulling it from there right into it. So it's going to pretty much pull everything throughout the village together into one system for record management and archiving and everything. So it's going to kind of clean everything up and make it hopefully easier to find things.
Yeah.
what's the maintenance cost? I should have asked this on that other line. The maintenance cost for that software.
About $4,000. So right now we pay $1,566 a year. It goes up to $4,056 or something like that. It's about $7,000 like one time the training and management stuff and mapping, and then it's about $4,000 a
That
Annual.
maintenance fee pays for the cloud space too?
Yes.
Wonderful.
I'm good with
That's cheap.
You good with the scanner?
I'm good, also just, for the cost of someone to do that, my architecture firm that I've worked at, and we've done that, the intern. Just, the intern does it, you know, it doesn't take
Yeah.
a lot of technology, it doesn't take a lot of experience, and you're just, you hire an intern.
I would encourage you though, and I know you will, Walter, to look into the lease agreement and
Yes.
see if it's important for us to stay on the up and up and have a lease versus purchase this piece of equipment. Everybody good? Sean, are you good with this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Look at, I mean, it's like this.
What is it?
You just got a large printer scanner plotter, sir.
I will say, I'll look at our actual printer company as well,
Okay,
or that's what Allison was just saying, we'll look and see if they have those as an option to add to our current printers.
okay.
To see that they would.
Do they lease up there as well?
They lease all those, like, the big printers.
But the one at community development as well as leased, okay.
And we did, the last time we did it, we had asked for a quote on a plotter, but not a scanner on a plotter.
Okay.
So, and they did give us a quote on that, so I'm sure that they have the scanner on a plotter, but we did it.
Walter, don't let it cheap out on you.
He's waited a long time.
I have experience with plotter scanners, no, you don't want cheap.
We do not, yeah.
I think this next item is quick. To me, hard to believe that we have not budgeted these dollars for this bridge that has been now grant approved. But I guess we did it because we didn't know if we were gonna get the grant, I assume, so that's why it was not allocated. But the grant has been approved. The four partners have agreed to the $50,000. We just want to allocate the actual funds toward that. So I'm a yes on that, and hopefully you all. This is the bike bridge. Yep. All right.
And just so that'll be a transfer.
Okay.
That'll transfer out when we do the resolution around the audit, like we did this year.
Yep.
That'll be part of that, just transferring out to the engineering fund, because I don't know when that's gonna be.
Okay.
Expense based on the work.
And you'll remind us when we go through that.
Yes,
anyway.
this will be on, part of the resolution will be the list of what it is.
Okay.
Did we get the agreement from the county on the maintenance?
No.
So did that as
That's not gonna happen. I've had multiple discussions with multiple county officials, and the maintenance agreement we now are trying to move forward with is with the township, the park district, and the village.
Okay.
So.
Forest Preserve?
Yeah. All right, a transfer, do we want to save this one for last, I guess? Transfer to the capital fund for future village hall down payment?
Sure.
Okay, we'll skip that for now. Do not use IRMA reserve credit for the 22, increasing unused reserve with IRMA for $57,000.
So currently, IRMA invests our money and gets interest on the reserves because it's kind of a pool, so we pay into it. And each year they declare investment income and interest income, which then goes back into your reserves as a community part of IRMA. So that money is being built up, and then you can use it for premium expenses or anything that IRMA. So in the past, we've kind of just fluctuated how much we use to kind of control our general fund expenses. And that's what this is. So with a surplus, you can decide not to use that when we pay our premiums in January of 22, and then that just increases the reserves that we have with IRMA for the future that we use on premium. We've always kept roughly about 2 years worth of premium in case something drastic happens. We have a full 2 years of premium sitting with IRMA. But this would just increase those reserves sitting on. So it doesn't have to be, but that's what we use it for on an annual basis. And I will say, what we use, we generally get back the following year from their investment income.
What are the annual premiums? Is it the 57?
The premium? No, this is just the credit we use. So the premium for 2021 was $177,000. Those are split between water and sewer and general fund.
Okay.
And then actually we just got 22's premium, which went down to about 163.
And you're saying we keep 2 years of premium on
Right
it?
now, if we don't use the reserves on hand for this coming year, we'll have about $400,000 sitting with.
Okay. Thoughts?
If I can.
Yeah, please.
I would be totally comfortable with not doing this.
Okay.
And using the credit. I mean, we've done it forever essentially, and we always kind of look at, okay, how much is there? We kind of start with, if we want to keep what we pay into IRMA flat, how much, we could do that for, generally, I want to say we kind of calculate about 5 years. And it's worked for a number of years, and it's kind of our little pool, if you will, like when we get to the end of that crunch time on budget, it's like, we can't make this work. We could, and it's never significant. I mean, we might adjust 10, 15, 20,000, but, so I appreciate Matt putting it on here, but if
It sounds like
if
there's enough
better
reserve in
uses
there.
for this 57,000, we're very solid with the credit we have in our budget.
Well,
There's
thank
nothing
you.
wrong with doing this,
Yeah.
but certainly it's,
Okay.
I would make it the highest priority.
Thank you.
I would agree with Brenda, putting here as an option,
Okay.
not as a recommendation to do,
Okay.
it's more of an option. We also, just so the board is aware, we did change our deductible about 2 years ago from 2,500 to 10,000. And by doing that, based on our history, is why we did it.
Yeah.
We actually get a credit for that also.
Okay.
We used to take that on our premiums, actually up until last year. But what they did is created a reserve account, so now you put that money into a reserve account to be used for your claims.
Okay.
So we not only have been using this credit and have about 400,000 now, we have started a reserve to use for claims as well. So we're kind of trying to put as much money away in case something drastic does happen for insurance-wise. But I think I agree with Brenda.
I think we got enough of a slush fund with someone else.
We use it, but we still have 2 years of premiums, and we started a claim fund as well.
Okay, I appreciate that. I didn't realize that. So, thank you. I'm gonna go with that recommendation that we're not gonna move that 57,000, if that's good with you all, and find a better use for it.
Do you want to,
Go ahead.
I'd say, do we want to, don't forget CD sign.
I got that on, I got it on
Okay,
here.
sorry.
So I guess we'll skip the transfer to infrastructure as well right now. Community development signs, for the building, yes, we need to let people know where our community development department is located. So I think that's just a necessity at this point.
Now they got his plotter.
Yeah. People are gonna be beating down the door up there now that they know where they are.
Lock down a big sign.
All right, so now I feel like, these are ongoing. Okay, so
This is our infrastructure.
that's your road program, yes.
That's what this other.
So we're talking about, I guess what I would say is, we've got ongoing budget stuff here, but these one-time transfers of this $699 is what we're dealing with.
Interject real quick, President Cronin. Jamie asked a question earlier, hypothetical to Chief Rollins as far as other items that the officers could be using. I'm thinking smaller items, much bigger than the 2 items that we're going to be talking about that might be quicker discussion. Are there other items on the tick list, if you will, for the officers' items that they need? What could make their lives easier back there for the next months, years before we get this plan rolling and get them over under the side of the building as well?
Obviously, we don't want to spend dollars to put back in there. We're not going to use it when we do get this out of the building. So we're cognizant of that. We have our internal discussions. Would we love to replace the 40 or 50-year-old desks that are back there? Absolutely. But it's still usable, it's still fixable, and the majority of the officers are out there, except for what we're sending a couple of the chairs that do have some things that shouldn't be there. So it's ideally, I'm grateful that you guys are having this discussion. I know during my presentation that those items came up, but it wasn't probably highlighted enough. during the discussion, because I think they hit you hard with the staffing and the size of the building, that the rest of the minor things that will help improve things. But yeah, there's opportunities for us to rework that back room, just like they did here at the Village Hall, with fixing or repurposing the cubicles down to 6 again. But none of that stuff, the extra material would have worked in the back, because we've also looked at that. Could we get septic sewer, hand me down from here to the other side, just trying, to be economical how we're looking forward. But that room could drastically be revamped, and it would make the workflow a lot easier. And hopefully, potentially, we talked about it with COVID, and everything's out in the open. We don't have to maintain any other type of barrier between the desks. So there are some items there. There's some particular items for that we look at records management software and field-based reporting. Similar to what you're hearing discussed tonight. For laser fishes, something right now we still type out or we can use Microsoft Word as many templates to generate our reports, and that product gets touched multiple times from the officer who writes it to the supervisor who then approves it or takes it back to records. But there are systems out there that's built into our software that can be a workflow and push it all the way across electronically. Another agencies that we share the records management system have that. Not everybody does. But there's an expense and there's an annual maintenance expense that goes along with it too. But it improves the workflow. It creates better efficiency and the quality of the work product is a lot better. But it's a learning curve. We do implement something like that. We're looking at the cars of the officers. Basically their workstation. We're very grateful for the opportunities and cars that we do get out here for them. We just had 4 alarms from officers that are interested in coming to work for us as part of the initial officer eligibility, and they're like, we couldn't believe how equipped we are. So compared with others. So I think we're above par on the vehicles. There's obviously options that are going to be coming up. And actually looking at our mobile video recorders, the company that we use was bought out and a couple of years back, and it's an end of life now because they want you to. It was a company that already had a mobile video recorder of their own, and they basically bought out one of the competitions. Okay, by the way, we're discontinuing it. We'll service you a little bit, but we want you to migrate over to the new equipment. So there's big dollars involved in that. So we have some decisions to make in the integration. We're looking forward towards moving over to the body cameras. We all want that stuff to be integrated so that we have one source where when one thing gets activated, the rest of it gets activated too. So if it's a taser or if it's a body cam or the emergency lights, they flow together. But they'll all come at a cost, and they have recurring costs for maintenance. So there are a number of hardware items, but there's also some software too. And then there's equipment, furniture equipment that would be nice to have. But in the end run, our goal is hopefully make it on, some of us being able to come over to this side of the building, and then we are going to repurpose that room. So whatever we put in there is not going to work. So, and it depends what comes out of this building, if the cubicles move with you. And, I'm seeing no's. So then it's a different.
Did I shake my head? I think that ideally, when we make decisions for this building, the idea is always, does it work? Will it work? So anything new, obviously, that this whole setup, that stays. It's specifically designed for this room. Even as far as the outlet goes, if we decide to go that route with the table, they're going to bring their guy out to tell you specifically where to put the outlet that will fit exactly where this table is. So those things, Chief, any changes, they stay. So it's what I want, well, I'm over here as I do, and you see me in all these, and I've got my calculator going. So when we get into the ongoing future budgets and you talk about the need for software as well, I think part of it is, do you have a short list of things that are like these items that we need to address, but then the bigger items are software items. When we talk about ongoing revenue stream that we have, we don't have to allocate today what we're gonna use exactly the $450,000 for. So if it means that going into next year's budget, you've had time to research and we can budget for it, we can say, okay, we expect this additional revenue. Chief, we can afford this software program. Doesn't have to be decided today anyway. Because basically we're doing this through, we're not doing anything till the end of the year.
The stuff that we're talking about that affects this year is the stuff we're currently talking about. The future stuff is just more get to like thinking about things, because we are going to have that discussion in a couple months for the budget, and that's where that stuff would be incorporated. And these are just the ideas that we have right now.
Yeah.
So that if it comes down to when we present this, that the board has other ideas, that we can already have those in the budget before it comes to. That's what this discussion was for ongoing.
Yeah.
So an item that I was thinking of, that was a bit of a softball question I was kind of throwing out in chief was, you know, could we do something to help offset? Now, I know there's a uniform allocation that the officers have as part of their collective bargaining, I believe, but what about, you know, protective vests or those sorts of things? Is that something that maybe we as a board would maybe carry more of the cost over so that the officers, so at least for this year and this one-time thing, right?
So the village pays 100% of the vest.
Already
for the officers, and then if there's an eligible grant, we'll get a reimbursement, typically it's 50/50, but we have been not successful getting those grants recently, but we pay 100% every 5 years, an officer can post a vest or so that happens to their existing vest.
But we're not asking officers to be in a situation where they're wearing them 6 months longer than they should or anything else like that.
Well, it's possible. So let me just rephrase it and say that last week, the vendor came out and measured 8 of the 10 officers, and those vests are due to be replaced in this upcoming May. So we're ahead of the game, so we should get them before sometime, you know, for the end of the fiscal year. It's been budgeted, but then there's officers leaving in whatever 18 months, and so we'll go on that for 6 months. You know, unless it's exposed and it's outside, you know, something else. Those vests will last beyond the 5 years recommended, but we don't push it too far. But if someone's, you know, obviously staying, we don't want to spend $1,000 or $900 on a vest. It's only going to be for a couple of extra months.
Is there anything, Chief, you know, this has been in my mind for, you know, ever since we started talking about the incentives that we're going to give out for trying to get officers to come in laterally instead of having to go through the academy. So, does that give, how does that impact morale, I guess, when you're saying that, you know, that you're going to give a bonus, so to speak, to an outsider coming in? And is there something that we can do for the officers to show our appreciation for them so that they're not going to look at these bonuses someplace else? Because that would be pretty tough on us to lose an officer.
Sure. And we could be true, because some of the contracts language could be argued, you know, Me Too language, if you're giving it to somebody else, you know, could have filed a grievance, or could the union collectively file a grievance that, hey, you're bringing someone else on, could it be offered to us? That does happen. You know, so you have to be cognizant, and I think it did happen in Aurora, that, you know, they were offering $20,000 to bring people, and you got 300 police officers, you know, so I'm not sure what the final arrangements were, but I know Florida around, so that could be extremely costly when we start going down that path.
I'm not thinking of, what you can do for incentives like that. Just, is there something that would help with morale, like Mike is asking? Is there something that, that we could provide that normally the officers have to pick up on their own, and then we just do it one time? I think we talked before about badges. People have to buy their own badges because they're a little fancy.
They buy their badges.
They buy all of our.
Yeah, but I mean, and it's,
Yeah.
is it something like that that would help with morale? Sure. That we do across the board that doesn't, violate anything else like that. Just kind of let them know that, yeah, we are thinking about you.
I think you have, my 2 cents on that is we 100% do. I know everybody on this board appreciates our officers. I think it opens us up a little bit to, do we not appreciate our public works employees? Do we not appreciate, because we're not doing those things village-wide, if we're just, that's my only concern.
I get that, yeah.
I think my thought would be that rather than quote individual something, I think the focus what you're talking about, my takeaway is to go back and have the conversations with Chief about the working space. And we talked about the chairs, but are there other improvements that we can do over there that would carry forward, and I don't know what they are right now. It could be something as simple as, they need a new coffee machine or microwave to the monitors that have the weather and that on need to be replaced to desk. I don't know what it might be, but I think if you give us, that would be the area that I would think we could focus on that they would appreciate because it makes their work life more comfortable, easier, more efficient, all of that rather than individual.
There was a huge uplift when we went carpet and the new planking in the back room. Oh my gosh, it made a huge difference, because we had stains.
Yeah.
And so those little things like Bryce is talking about will go down the way. They go in other agencies and the other departments, very similar. I'm sure it's going to as we take the global approach to what we do in all the departments too. So we're all team players. We want everyone else to have very similar things and appreciate it. And fought very hard for the officers. But I just want to make sure that that when we the ultimate goal for us is we need this really bad. Anyone that's steward of this police department has the space, the needs, the workload. It has been it's a time bomb. It's a ticking time bomb, and we're very fortunate nothing's happened over there so far.
Well, let's talk about that then, because we got let's talk about how the heck we can. Yes, please. I'm sorry.
I would like to see this back lot secured. I think it's long overdue. I think that's something we should look at, securing that back lot. We have all that equipment back there with the squad cars, all the rifles that are in there right now in this building. Just the pure fact of officer safety issues with ambushing, coming up and destroying the squad cars, prisoners coming in and out. That lot should be secured. I would like to see it fenced in at some point in time. And that's something that can be done and won't be changed once we move over. Chief, do you see a need for that, or is that just easy and silly?
No. It's a common practice in law enforcement because we don't have to only for we do have to escort people out of the back, and then at the same time, as you said, the equipment. If someone came along, it's very easy to break out the windows or do the tires and damage the car. And as you see, it takes forever to get a car outfitted. The new cars are still sitting out there. We're still waiting. If something happens to our fleet, we're going to be tripled up in a car somewhere because there's not enough cars that will go around. So
the story example, I don't mean to interrupt, Chief, but Matt, with respect to what you said, and maybe Chief, you had brought it up, you were expressing the needs. Talked about the risk of someone being brought in, doing a transfer, and they start running, and someone's got to chase them across the street because we haven't spent a couple $1,000s on a fence. Is a liability that I am not comfortable with. I can tell you that definitively.
All right, let's talk about this. Let's get to the solution. So, Brad, the public works area over here has the brick and black fence and brick and black fence. Can we put another pillar on the other side of the drive, in a brick pillar to mirror the other side and utilize that same fence? I don't know if there's a fence height requirement that you would need. If that is high enough, if you need it higher, and can you get a quote to then tie the fencing back to the building and run behind the lot and tie it back on this side?
We can, you'll have some elevation issues with the curb we'll have to get through, but it can be done.
Can you work on those quotes? Okay.
You know what I like to do, Brad? Just throw me a number, make me feel good.
He doesn't know. You know off the top of your head how many linear feet?
Well, I think that when we did this fence at Wall 9, it was like 40 grand.
Yeah, no, just to give you a context that, yeah, we're not,
Because
and I'm not saying we should do it.
But
yeah.
how many?
Probably,
It's not cheap.
it's not cheap.
No.
I'm not saying it's not a good thing, we should do it.
No.
I don't want to be
If
expensive.
it's $100,000 though, and you secure all the police cars, it's $100,000, and we just made it very secure back here. I mean, if we're gonna, this is how I felt about public works. When you finally have something to do and take care of a big responsibility that it's been kicking the can, we have to take that opportunity and say, okay,
Yes.
let's deal with this today because we can.
Yeah.
So.
But I mean, are we talking about the same kind of fence?
I think aesthetically, if it works, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be up to, Chief would probably tell you better, but I mean, the main focus of having a fence is to keep somebody out. Not so much for privacy, in my opinion. I don't think that it's so much about the privacy of seeing the squad cars back there. I think it's more of we need to secure the lot to keep people from coming in.
You want to
for
slow
people that are
down.
here from going out.
That's right.
People drive by here all the time and see the squad cars. I don't think that it doesn't need to be completely shielded. I think it just needs to be fenced in, secured. That's $40,000, and like President Coleman said, I mean, it's an investment into all the equipment that's out there. Let's face it, it's officer safety.
Yes.
I mean, we have officers out there with their backs turned to the cars, loading cars up or unloading cars. In this day and age, it's only going to get worse. And it'd be a shame for us to sit here in a couple months and say, man, we really should have spent that money on that.
I would be able to live with myself.
That would survive the transfer.
So I think it's an easy thing. We have some extra money. I think we should highly look at that and put it at the top of the list.
And I think with that being said, then all of the other municipal employees park in the front lot, and we truly just secure this back lot from the police department. Because you can walk around.
Well, I'm not
There's some
with
open
you.
spots back there. I think, they can park back there too. But
I don't know if you would.
I know for officers believe, sometimes they'll have extra equipment in their personal cars that's left out front here that's, unsecured.
Yeah.
I know sometimes I have paperwork, confidential paperwork that might be in a folder in my car. I left it in the car in an accident. I mean, really all that stuff should be secured, during their shift for sure.
Okay.
So.
And you use some sort of a key fob access, roll down the window.
Yeah.
Slides open.
Okay, that's gonna be a little bit additional expense. Well, you have a key fob, right?
Yeah.
That's key fob, the public
We would
works.
probably use this. You can either use fobs or door openers if you are. It's the same. Use the same kind of gate operator that's on that.
Okay. Well, I just put $100,000 down as a number.
Because we can do that same style fence, but if you wanted like whatever you want to call that, the terrace top,
Yeah.
So it looks like a prison, if you will.
I don't necessarily know that that's necessary.
Do we want it to look like that?
It's where the tops curve out so people can't climb up to get over.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if that's.
So residential.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that that's needed. I mean, right now there's nothing, so I think that's a nice fence that you guys have next door, finish off the security would probably be fine, so, in my opinion at least.
Yeah. Hey, listen, these officers tomorrow, Chief, if you have a meeting with them, they're gonna start coming to board meetings, I think. That would be the next thing. I think and so I'm gonna, let's talk about it here now that we're here. But I think that part of the ongoing future budget that I can't wait to get to is regarding the police department, because that, when you talk to the officers, talk about a morale booster, they're just trying to get to their base of operating, and they're down 2 people. So we'll get into that. But let's talk about transfer to the capital fund for future village hall down payment. as we just heard, Chief wants the building. So, how do we get there? We have moved some funds already.
Yeah, so currently, we have about $487,000 balance, remaining for future village hall from the transfers that were made last year.
Okay.
So,
Did you say 487?
Yes.
Okay.
And those are earmarked, in our capital project fund 30.
Okay.
So those are already earmarked. After everything we just talked about for one-time project items, we're about 475.
Remaining.
Minus that 100,000.
You took the 100,000. Okay.
So that's what we're roughly at right now. So that's kind of your leftover for this year.
Okay. What did you start now? I had 115,930 that I calculated. I went through the list of these one times, but I think I might have used 30,000 for office furniture. So maybe I need to add another. So that would give me 125.
I had 124 for prior to the 100,000.
Okay, fair enough. All right. So now we're at 1. Okay. So we're at 224, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So yeah, I got it for the 475 is what's kind of remaining for this year at one time.
Okay.
Again, that's, I don't know, with Chief, I know the hiring of a police officer is tough to do. You're in the process of hiring it, but that could be part of an expense that you hire them prior to next budget year.
Okay.
Again, the remaining can be transferred to future. That's not something you have to determine now. Again, we'll discuss this again at budget when we approve it. For stuff we know, so like we've talked about, where my note is.
I'm sorry, Matt. Let me just, while you're running through that, I have 90,150. We're at a 6-month point, so even if Chief were to hire someone today as part of this number, we're at 45.
Yeah, like if you hired him actually 2 months ago.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's no way we're going to use that. I know you need 2. You're trying to fill, but this 90,000 though is the person that wasn't even budgeted. Like the one that retired was budgeted, right? So this is the person that you lost a while ago that was, okay.
Yeah, so the one that's on here and ongoing is the one that was from 3 years ago.
Correct.
The one that he's still trying to hire is the replacement of the promotion.
Right.
Which is budgeted already.
Which is
already budgeted.
Yes, that's already in this. So it's at 475 again. The transfers to whether it's road or future village hall don't need to be determined now. We're going to talk about it again at budget time. We're also going to talk about it right before the audit is presented once we have final numbers. So that one can kind of be like, just think about it on where you want the money to go, and then once the audit is complete, like we discussed this year, is that will be presented the meeting before the audit is presented to determine what we want to do with the surplus and do that resolution transfer. So that one's kind of we can hold on it until we get confirmed numbers with the audit, but like we talked about already for the Blackberry Creek, 50,000 is going to be transferred.
Yeah.
Because we know that we've now approved that. So that's something I'll do now, but then we'll talk more later about what that remaining amount is going to be.
Can we just talk real quick about the village hall debt service of 250? On what dollar amount?
The 250, well, we used it off of 5.3. Our debt service was at 215, and for every million we went up, it went up 30 cents.
Okay.
So I guess 6.3.
Okay. So I guess my point is when we look at that number, it could be less, especially if we're building
Correct.
a nice chunk to put down.
This is based on 6.3 actual bonded money.
Okay.
So that number for the transfers can be discussed at a later time. It's just that's an option for the remaining amount. It doesn't have to be spent. We can transfer it for future payments.
Okay. Before we even go to ongoing, even though this kind of falls on ongoing, less than 12 months ago, I brought up a $50,000 facade program that I still believe to this day that we need to do for the older part of town, especially. And it isn't a gifting of money, it really is a partnership with a business owner who wants to go maybe on a 50-50. It's to be discussed by this board, but I certainly would like to get that program going. I don't know if anybody else has thoughts on it. I know, Mike, you were not part of that discussion when it got.
I certainly encourage you on that. I think, yeah.
I know Jamie, you weren't as well.
I watched it.
You watched it.
Yeah,
It was fun to listen to, wasn't it?
It was. I was in favor of that. I'm in favor of now. I was thinking of the same thing.
Okay.
That might be
A good time to start a program like that. Yeah. And it really is a partnership. I mean, it's like, listen, if I was a business owner over there and wanted to freshen my facade, and I'm willing to
doesn't apply to fences on Main Street.
Sounds good. All right, Matt, so can we throw that at you, that we're gonna need to, it doesn't, I don't know how we wanna work it, I'm not looking to spend it tomorrow, but that we can work toward implementing the program and what those parameters look like. I know that you have some basics.
Yes,
That-
I have that for the ongoing, kind of going forward.
Okay,
I put that in, so that'll be some
Okay.
during budget time.
okay.
Just to wrap up the transfers, there were 2 documents at the end of the packet. One was the infrastructure kind of breakdown again, as we're going through all these road programs and everything, it's just updating them, so you guys are aware.
What page, man?
It's page 68, or, yeah, 68 is the one that's on it. We'll go back. So, one that has the green and red on it. So what this is showing is what we're anticipating our fund balances. What I did was remove kind of the road program stuff and not the sales tax, because now associated that to our road program for the 5 years. So it's just showing you what our total fund balance is projected to be, less any of our earmarked funds. So right now there's only 3, which is the utility burial fee. We still technically have $280,000 that was transferred from the $450,000 from, or $430,000 from the previous year. It's technically earmarked sidewalk and road, but again, that's what that entire fund is. So I don't know if you want it to show as a separate line, but that's really what that whole fund is infrastructure.
Yeah.
And then there's still a remaining settlement from the Kimball that is restricted funds in that.
From what, I'm sorry, when he coughed right when you said that.
The Kimball Hill
Kimball Hill.
Sellers Ridge settlement, there's still funds in there. We are currently using those funds for maintenance for the Gordon Road median. So, but it is a restricted funds. So, what we're anticipating is about 2.6 million to still be in that fund balance at the end of the year using these restricted funds. Now, if we remove the 280, it obviously goes up to about 2.9 million because sidewalk road program is that whole fund, essentially. So, just I don't know how you want to look at it. So that's really what it is. It's kind of breaking out that fund so you don't see $3 million and what does that mean and where is it going. It's to just keep reminding everybody where it is, and this will be in all the budget documents and discussions that we have.
But our road program is off of a revenue stream. It's not even touching this.
Not in this at all.
So this is all extra.
Correct. And that's why at the bottom we kind of talked about the projects that could be used, and the big one is the bridge, and then Parkway 47, which we still think we may get funding for, but it's in here in case we have to fund it and want to fund it.
Okay.
And then, I was looking at the crosswalk here.
Yeah.
So
that he's got in.
That's in this year's budget.
That's
We budgeted $150,000 this year, and based on the estimates, it was $165,000. So it may go over a little bit, but that would be part of the projections going forward for fund balance. And then real quick, the page before that, on page 67, it's kind of a full village-wide overview of fund balances.
Okay.
So what that's going to show you is what we project that ending balances for this year is, and then any restrictions. So if you look at the fund balance expected for 21-22, that shows you them all for each of the funds. But then that next kind of section shows you if there's a reserve policy on hand. So it tells you what the added amount is for the 25% is the 1.4. The variance would be the differences between our expected fund balance and that policy. So it's at $135,000 based on the 699. But if we're going to be transferring and doing something, it's going to reduce that variance. Which, if you remember last year when we did that resolution, we got it down to about $120,000. So if you remove $700,000 of this, it's right around that same. And that's what we presented to the board at a lot of times, is to get that back to 27% roughly.
Okay.
And what do we want to do with that? And then kind of just showing that going forward for all list shows 19 million. I mean, you gotta kind of take away some because police pension fund has nothing to do with the village. It's not like village money we can touch, but because of it's part of our books, we have to show it.
Can we delve into tip 1 and tip 2 for a minute while we're on this page?
Let me understand what this is first.
Okay.
That number at the bottom, the village-wide total, is money on hand?
Money on hand
At the end of the fiscal year?
Minus police pension fund. So minus the 6.5 million. It's going to be money on hand or in investments. So we have about $6 million in investments currently. That's a majority of these fund balances.
And then, how much do we want to have, do we need for a reserve?
The reserve is depending on the fund. So general fund has 25% reserve, water fund has 25%, and refuse has 12.5%.
So how much of this is actually reserved?
Doing math, 2.5.
We just went on a spending spree, so
Well, I was wondering, I mean,
Well, I will say you have to also think we got $560,000 of free money last year from COVID, and there's also $1.3 million from ARPA. So there's $2 million that was not there before.
but this says 20.
Wait, no, I think.
Am I looking at the wrong column?
No.
Fund balance expected?
No, I understand the 19, but the 19 minus 6.5.
minus the 6.5,
Right,
yeah.
is at 13. There's about $2 million from COVID that's new. So
That's just all surplus money then?
well,
I
not
mean, is that what, that's what
Yes,
I'm trying to
I know.
understand?
Yes and no, it's
Well, like,
budgeted.
if you go to the sheet Matt just talked about, it's like, okay, yeah, there's $2 million in that fund that's not restricted within that, but that's kind of, well, that's how we plan to pay for the Phase Lane Bridge. So, I mean, most of these, while they're not legally restricted, or they're not, even your fund balance policy, it's a policy, you don't have to have it. So I think, yes, you could look at this and say, wow, I got 20 million minus 6.5 million for police pension, so the village has, $13 million, we can do whatever the hell we want with it.
No,
I'm not what you're saying.
We've got a village hall.
Right.
We've got to transition this village hall.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just wondering.
Well,
I'm sitting here wondering for myself, where's this money coming from?
Right.
Well, and part of it is too, Matt's job, which he does extremely well, is planning all of these future expenses that we have and building up, which he's so great at. I mean, you should talk about even the fact that we're funding all of our, at 100%, we're funding all of our vehicle replacement. That, according to Matt, doesn't exist everywhere. We're very fortunate that we've been able to do that. So, going through this, there's projects earmarked, and there's stuff we don't even know about yet. So it's kind of like, we just don't, we know about
I'm just trying to handle what we got.
Yeah, that's what we got.
I mean, okay. I was not aware of that.
So you kind of.
That's my shot, okay?
Now, can we get it? So now twofold, because this is what I want to address with your comment earlier. So when we talk about tip 1 and tip 2, and you ask about certain roads that are eligible through the TIF for the road maintenance program. If you want to ask a question, and I can give you my perspective on it, and then we can have, but my perspective on it is using, yes, everybody uses those roads, but using TIF dollars that we've held back for development incentives, if you will, or sewer infrastructure, just for a maintenance issue that is our responsibility. And we've taken those tax dollars from the library and fire protection district, and now we're going to use those dollars to offset the burden to the village. I have a hard time going out to the public and saying, thank you very much, fire protection district, school, and library, and township, and county, thanks for the road. That was our responsibility, in light of the fact that we can figure it out.
The purpose of my question was, we're looking at doing those roads in 3 years?
I think, I don't know where it fell on the,
That was year 3.
or something.
I know Winston.
Yes.
You're at 23.
Year 3.
And we're gonna have developers that are gonna be basically tearing up those roads, hopefully, right?
Yeah.
I'd rather see a lot of that stuff get done as part of that.
A part of their project. Well, you know. Yeah, I get it. Noted. Noted. And one of the things.
And I understand your view, and I don't necessarily disagree with it.
Yeah.
But I also have, my view is also, if we have TIF dollars, let's use them for what TIF is designed for. And that's.
Yeah. I hear you. I think that we're both.
Because it allows us to put money in another area, that doesn't need to be, obviously our roads have a lot of.
They do, right. And that's going to be a continued effort. As far as tip 1 and tip 2 go, so I always mess them up, but I always know by dollar value. So tip 1, we have done the sanitary sewer study, right? Is that wrapping up or is that complete?
That's right.
It's wrapping.
Well, that is the Dugan Road sanitary study, so.
Okay.
There,
And that's done? Or it's
That's
wrapping
wrapping
up?
up.
It's wrapping up.
This month.
But that was part of this, right? So when we just went through that, Matt, those dollars are already allocated in here. Okay. So, and obviously because the 2 TIF districts touch, you can move by resolution dollars over to the other TIF if you need to. We have allocated $50,000 that we wanted to earmark as a surplus out of TIF 1. With that being said, that's on a 50-50 split, if memory serves, between Big Rec schools and roughly a 50-50 split, based on what I saw of the surplus breakdown between Canelan schools and Big Rec schools because of that TIF district and because it just goes out, right, to the taxing bodies based on the property. So we have no projects, and also I should preface it with, we have not taken a policy from the board to front load any development out of this fund. It has all been based on your development comes in, it starts producing increment. If there's a TIF agreement, you are getting reimbursed out of the increment that you generate. So with that being said, we have $1 million in TIF 1, and we have $305,000 in TIF 2. So I would like to declare another surplus out of TIF 2, which is the Canelan School District solely. So we've already had our meeting with our joint review with all the taxing bodies out for the TIF, and they are aware that we were planning on declaring the $50,000. They don't know when it's coming. But I'd like to discuss with this board another surplus out of TIF 2. The increment out of the senior building, last I looked, I think it's doubled. It was like $50,000 and now it's producing about $99,000 on the senior apartment building. If we, and I know the only project that who knows when it's going to happen that I can think of that we need funds for is the burial of the ComEd lines in front of Walgreens. So with the development agreement that we're trying to strike on the front side of 47 and Galena, the developer is burying those lines as part of the project. But as part of the negotiation, we said we wouldn't require them to then bury the other lines, that we would take care of that, and we can handle that through the TIF district. So, and it needs to be done. I have no idea if that has any bearing on the fact that Walgreens is having power issues and also culverts over there. So I just want to know your thoughts on, we're not stockpiling this for a project. It sounds like, from early discussions, that the sewer study, when it comes back, it's probably not a feasible project. So that is anticipated that we're not going to be able to use this necessarily for sanitary sewer out to Dugan. So it begs the question to all of you. In my mind, I feel like we're sitting on some dollars that we can get back to the other taxing bodies, and if we don't have anything on the horizon. I'm not saying all of it, because conservatively we don't know what's going to come up and what things we might need to do, but something.
If I can, we anticipated this conversation, certainly, because once the sanitary idea doesn't seem to be be advisable at this time. There are other projects that I don't really want to get into tonight that I think the board, in TIF 1, that I think the board would give serious consideration to. You may say, yeah, we really don't want to, but so we have been talking about saying, okay, we kind of was focused on that sanitary, but there were some other projects all along that really never came off because the sanitary was the focus that, at least as far as TIF 1 goes. And I know you're not suggesting tonight, let's on TIF 1 and declare everything.
No.
I know, I appreciate that, but,
No.
but in that one, there are other projects that we think make sense that would likely.
And you don't want to clue us in?
Nah, not tonight. And when I do share it with you, you'll understand why.
Not relating to what Brent's saying, so I know what you're saying, so we can't declare a surplus out of TIF 2 transferring funds from TIF 1.
No.
Okay,
I just know that whatever we do, we have 305,000, and we're trying to leave money in there, so
I
think,
I just don't want to confuse you.
But
We can transfer for the utility.
Thank you, right,
But we'll declare out of the 300.
right. Thank you for the
Whatever we
clarification.
decide for TIF 2 is.
Yes,
But then later, if we need money, we can transfer.
correct.
But not for a surplus.
Not for
a project, for the
Not to do a
utility.
surplus, but if we did it for a project.
Yes.
We do it for utility bureau, you can do a resolution to transfer from TIF 1 to TIF 2 for that project.
So what do you think, how much?
I was thinking
Can
150.
you disclose that tonight?
I can disclose that I was thinking 150, but that was me.
And that's going back to where?
That is the focus on the schools. All tax advisors, we get money out of that, because however falls in the tax bill, but the school district is Kingwood School District. It's not split between Big Rock.
So,
Library and the fire protection and the township and the county.
so we declare a surplus, we get our chunk of money out of that, the rest
Everybody
of
else
the
does
taxing
too.
bodies do as well.
And then when does that get?
Whenever we do.
When does more money come back in?
Next tax season.
I mean, when is it?
We
I don't
allow
know when you guys.
June and September, they're due.
Is how long after the tax bills are paid do you guys actually get paid?
Fairly quick. Yeah, because most of the people that are in the TIPs are obviously businesses, and so when the bills go out May 1st, they pay them right away, so we usually get it sometime in June or July.
Okay, so we anticipate then we're gonna get another, how much do you think in the TIF? 2.
Well, with the amendment should be fully through probably 140,000 next year.
Again.
In TIF 2, it's hard to tell because of that amendment what the difference is, because we had to remove from TIF 1 and add to TIF 2. So, yeah, I mean, just looking at this year's numbers, about another surplus of that same amount.
I'm thinking more actually.
Why 150? You had
I'm just trying to, well, I know that, the Walgreens project is roughly, we estimated, I think someone estimated, I don't know where it came from, I saw a number of 250,000 roughly to bury those lines.
Okay.
If we take out 150, we've got 150 left in here, plus any, then we don't have to do a resolution to move money, we have money already in that TIP for that project.
Yeah, from memory, I want to say that number was what the developer said, that their estimate of the off-site utility burial would be. Obviously, that depends on, and I don't know what their spot was, how far north on 47 you go.
Mm-hmm.
It is one of those ones where, yeah, when you drive by there, there's a lot going on. Yeah, I mean, it's as good as estimates we have.
Yeah, I mean, it just, like I said, we still have some, I don't know what his projects are, but there is money to move. It was just leaving a conservative amount there to cover that project that's located within the TIF district if need be.
So how much of the 150 would the village actually see?
5.56%, something like that.
It goes on that increment, so the school district would get 67%,
Correct.
the village would get it 7%.
Yes.
Or 5.9, they get their 7%, okay.
Yeah.
Are we looking for the school district to put in lights over at the middle school or something like that? Is that what?
They don't know,
Something
honestly, they don't know about it. I just,
They can always.
everybody can always use it. And if we're not using it for a development project, we're just keeping it from our park district needs money, everybody needs money. So, Okay.
I do have a breakdown the TIF one surplus, Camden got 35% and Hinkley got 32%, Village got 5.8.
See, it's close to a 50.
But the point is it's money that's not doing anything
No,
for anybody.
between the two
It's
school
not going
districts.
back to the community, it's not funding schools, libraries, park districts, so it's stuck in the fund somewhere, so let's get it out and get it working for the people.
I mean, if we're not gonna front load anything, then there's no point.
Right. Okay. Okay. Sounds like 150. If we'll, work those numbers, and who knows what he's got cooking. So.
And that's okay, just so you know, that'll be next meeting.
Okay.
That was already planned for.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's always something we always just do. No, it's good to talk about this.
Okay.
We'll have them both presented for resolution at the next.
Excellent. Thank you all for jumping on board with that. I think it's important. Okay, now where are we here with this? This is just a discussion item, mid-year budget update. Are we through this?
Unless you want to continue talking about the ongoing stuff, or do you want to?
Oh, no, I missed that. No. We jumped to this page. And yes, let's get to the ongoing expenses, because that was the big thing we wanted. Hiring a police officer. So, Matt, help the board understand that this isn't a new officer. This is a...
Correct. In April of 2019, an officer resigned, and then that position was not filled. So this is a vacancy of current position from 2019.
Okay.
It's not an addition, it's a replacement.
In talking to the officer, I mean, I might have alluded to the fact that we might have some funds with someone within the police department when I saw him on the street. And they were like, this is so exciting. I mean, that is a morale booster for them, even though it just gets them back to a, here. But anyway, so I think that's an absolute yes in my opinion. I assume you all?
That is a no-brainer.
No-brainer. Chief, we just ate up whatever what was the 450 did we say is the rate recurring?
Yes.
Okay, so now we're down. Debt service village hall, obviously that's great to have in here. It's going to drop if we build that fund to then put more down, so that annual expense will drop. And this, by the way,
But not by a lot. But it's only 30,000
per million. But this is on 6.3, and right now we're at about 5.3. 5.3?
Yeah, I mean,
for the 10,000.
10,000 square foot. That's roughly where they're coming in.
obviously, site
That baseline plan that was there.
Yes.
Alright.
And that's that had furniture, that had, it had everything except for the land cost, which I'm working on that for this. So I'm hoping,
Make it rain.
yeah.
Valid point.
Valid point.
Why is this not in the SSA or not yet?
It doesn't exist.
Never existed?
No, it did exist.
Prior board, voted to remove it, to eliminate it.
So no longer.
There's no longer an SSA. There's the court-approved
Essay.
but the backup SSA that was approved at the kind of last year when it was still nobody could object. A few years ago, at the budget time, when we said, nope, we don't need to levy for it. Essentially, a motion was made to repeal the SSA, and it passed.
So that becomes a taxpayer issue for a neighborhood. Now, let's talk about the 65,000. Mr. Merkel? Is that it? Yeah!
Come on. So, we were unable to secure a real proposal for NCAP in the short amount of time we had. So I looked at the last time that we did a burn in a hard scape cleanup out there and everything, it was like right around 50,000. Now, we've cleaned up area on the north end of it by the trees and stuff, so there may be less, it could be more because there's more area to burn. So I wasn't able to get NCAP to provide a proposal in a timely fashion, so it was strictly a calculated guess based on 2015 numbers.
Okay. So I looked up today the property that I believe is over there, and I had 27 acres. I don't know if you can confirm or deny. It looks like, and it wraps around the court. So if that's the only property that was burned, it's 27 acres.
And then you have the stuff north, behind the houses.
See, that's, okay, well, that property is owned by the Park District, according to the tax
But it's
record.
part of that wetland area there, they're putting tiles right there.
So we maintain the Park District's property?
We have, yes.
Well, I'm not saying what we have to do now, the problem is that no one was maintaining anything, and we're the ones that have the incentive to maintain it, because we've got, a lot of money invested in the drainage system.
Right. No, I get that.
I mean, we've at various times done work on private property up there where, owners just won't do anything and don't do anything, and you reluctantly say, well, you can't force them to, so we give permission to go do it ourselves.
Okay. So it's a significant amount of acreage as well. I mean, I looked it up. I know we burn in our neighborhood, and I have to look up the acreage that we have. It's a lot of acreage. I mean, one is 5 acres alone, and that's the smallest section. So it was my understanding that if you took it and equated it, there wasn't much else going on, that we could figure out our negotiated contract price per acre.
Don't forget it's.
I know.
It changes your whole scope from you hired to us hired.
I know.
Unfortunately.
Would your HOA be interested in some off-site?
Yes.
I got some land I want to sell you.
Same price as the playground, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, did we record that deed yet? That transfer, maybe we can slip another page into it.
Yeah, add this other bid, just add this other bid.
Burn south for your fishing.
All right, so we'll anxiously await for you to get a number, hopefully by the next board meeting. And it might be that. I mean, I don't know. It just seemed like it was shocking to say every 3 years we're going to go into a burn for $65,000. A lot.
How much would it cost to just pave it? I know you want to make it burn that road.
Well,
We used to have money for that?
about 20 million, because you have to have all kinds of land bank credits to pay the wetland.
Again, these items don't need to be voted on.
I know.
During the budget.
Yeah.
We know two of them you want in the budget, it's just.
Okay.
And then the last one is steel coating village bike paths.
Yeah.
It's not been done since I've been here. We budgeted for it in the infrastructure fund, but that's just because it was moving it from the general fund. It used to be in the general.
But we have not budgeted for it in the past?
We have, it's just been in the infrastructure fund, we just haven't done it.
Okay.
So this is to do all, correct? Yes. All village owned bike paths.
Okay.
We did this one last year.
Yeah.
Part of that too.
So this is all village owned, if that's something that we can discuss.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting what you guys bring back as ongoing expenses, as this is the first pass and you're under the gun to get it out here, but it seems like there's room, you know what I mean? And this doesn't, for the record, we were anticipating paying debt service in future sales tax revenue. And today, we're in a place where we have all this additional sales tax revenue from that change that we're not in a rob Peter to pay Paul situation, say it's coming. We have money today, we're gonna have money tomorrow, and we're still short of what's coming in every year. So it's a great position to be in, we're very lucky.
Yes.
Did you have anything else you wanted to add, Matt?
No, that is correct, yeah, this is not in any future.
So in a couple of years, hopefully we can get this frontage on 47 going, and then next year they're supposed to break ground on lot 17, the Jewel, so we'll have more sales tax revenue, property tax revenue coming from those projects as well. So that's good, but we do have another discussion item. I'm sorry, folks.
Saying that, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Very happy.
And it's nice to go through it and understand it the way he gets it right for us.
Easy to read,
Yeah.
big picture,
Yes.
more scope than.
Okay, next item.
Now, when you come out of the budget, you can smile.
I know, it's a good
We
day.
can't tell though.
And we have, I know.
I'll take one out.
Can we discuss the American Rescue Plan Act, the ARPA, Matt?
Sure. Yeah, this is gonna be fairly quick because there hasn't been much change since the last time we discussed it, more just kind of keeping you guys aware. In total, we currently use $43,000 for funds. In the projections, I've used 50, just assuming some expenses between now and the end of the year. There were 37 what are considered non-entitlement units, which is under 50,000 in population, that did not fill out the submission form or just denied. That totaled about $382,000, which then was distributed back to you based on the same calculation. The village got a whopping $694. So that's really all that's changed. Again, like I had discussed, they changed the reporting date. It is now actually through March 31st to April 30th of 2022 now instead of September 30th.
Okay.
We still have no information on
Okay.
how to report or what they're going to need. So as we go forward, I have everything ready to go because I was ready for the September 30th, and there's not much change that's going to happen, especially now you're seeing our revenue numbers. I'm not even going to do the work to do revenue loss calculations for December 31st of 2021 because our revenues are good. So there's really not going to be any additional work except for expenses that we have from that period on. So I don't expect much, but they haven't come out with anything on the portal or what's going to be needed to report. The only thing which the board had discussed before is what to do with the funds. The biggest change was that it came out that the project has to be discussed or pre-planned, not pre-planned, but it had to be in the process prior to March 3rd of 2021 to be used for water and sewer projects. We obviously have the two that we put out here, Dune Woods and the North Water Tower have been discussed. Obviously, a year ago we did a portion of Dune Woods already, so that's a very easy way to prove that we already planned it. We're just completing that project. That's, I think, right now at staff level, the recommendation is to just complete that project with these funds. But again, that's for the board to discuss. There's other items, but those are the two that came to our head. Like we talked about stuff that hasn't been discussed prior to that date.
I think for accounting purposes, it makes it really clean and easy for him to do what he has to do on one project that we are already planning on doing next year. So that would be I would agree with staff on that. And then I imagine it's going to be more than the 1.3 that.
We don't know, but based on it was somewhere close to 1.3.
Okay.
But that was a very, very rough number.
Okay. So I'm sorry, Jamie, were you going to add something? Okay. It's just an easy, instead of saying a little bit for this and a little bit for this.
I was wondering if certain things could be included, but we have useful, very useful.
Yeah. And he doesn't have to account for it for 2-3 years, right? When's the deadline to use it?
It has to be earmarked by December 31st, 2024, and expended by December 31st, 2026. So we just have to have essentially a contract or out to bid prior to December 31st, 2024.
So he'll get it off his plate of things to watch over and deal with and be done and move on. Excellent. Staff reports. Oh, look at that, Allison. Very good use of paper. I was like, where the heck are they? Oh, they're on that side. Brent.
Only update would be we did this afternoon do a virtual interview with the economic development director candidate. And quite honestly, we haven't had a chance, Jen Wolf and myself, to regroup. It was late this afternoon to kind of share our perspectives on it. But we did have the first interview, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Thank you. Any questions for Brent? Walter?
Brian from Depot had a bail update on what's going on at Deco. If you haven't been out there, you'll notice that the propane tanks are gone. Turns out they never had to connect them because NIGAS made the gas connection. And so we're hopeful that the building is being heated. And let's see, the other thing that really didn't address in my report was we sent a revised annexation agreement draft to Prairie Road Commons, so hopefully get this moving again. And but we still do not have their responses to our engineering comments, so we're no closer to getting final engineering approved tonight than we were 3 weeks ago.
Thanks for that update.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Thanks, thanks. You can't make them do the work.
Yeah, I know. It's too bad.
It's sitting on the land that's not being used, so.
It's terrible. They're spending money.
Yeah.
They're just constantly spending money, so. Any questions for Walter on any other items? Okay. Tony?
We did, several weeks ago, the board approved the streetlight replacement program for Windsor West. We're happy to say that that is complete, and Windsor West now has all LED streetlights. And that also included Division, Capitol, and Park. So that means this year we've done Windsor Point, all those streets in Windsor West that are now converted to LED streetlights.
That's great.
Can I,
Yeah, do you have a...
the LED work brings up, this one up was Creek Golf Course?
Oh.
Is that the same thing?
No.
Status on
Yeah,
it?
go ahead. Walter, I think it was, well, I don't know where I saw it. Oh, the letter from the neighbor.
Well, the reporting party informed us that the lights have been changed because there's no longer any glare coming in her house. So I'm going out after this meeting to verify that.
We got a letter today. She was very appreciative that she could finally go outside and not have all this light. So it was news to us. We didn't, so I haven't seen it either. But that's the update.
Maybe they can give us like the plotting that we get from the other developer.
No, we asked for that, but we never got it.
We're still, I know that she requested, I don't know that it was even a request, it was we need this provided. And so we'll still track after them to make sure that they didn't provide it before they did the work. Let's just, and that's when it became a problem because they didn't get a permit and they.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay. Tony, sorry. Did we go through everything? Oh, you did your whole update. Does anybody have any questions for Tony? You backtracked. All right. Brad, do you have anything you want to add?
No.
Okay. No, it's Matt.
As you can see, I attended that webinar on infrastructure money. I did focus mainly on just stuff that's going to affect us locally. There was stuff for airports, green, agriculture, and everything. So that's what this focuses on, and there's some questions on that. The only other thing, I don't know if anyone saw the law change on detail limited communities for this kind of recapture. It was a law that was passed in August that essentially automatically adjusts every detail limited community, which would be anyone that's not home rule. And it automatically recaptures any refunds or assessments or lawsuits from the prior year and automatically adds it to how much money you're going to get. I don't know where that money is coming from. If that's coming back to the taxing bodies or the residents, I don't know. But it's an automatic thing. We don't have to do anything for it. It automatically happens. And that is on the Team County website to see how much that is. The villages was $1,300. But school districts in Cleveland got $77,000 that they don't have to do anything for, it's automatically done by the clerk. So that's a new law this year. And it also doesn't affect your key count. So if you're hitting your tax limit, it's above and beyond. It does not affect, it doesn't, like it takes you to that, it's kind of just a separate amount. That's a new law that happened this year, and that was the first year that county said.
And so when do we expect that $1,300?
We have received it.
Oh, okay.
It's billed in, and it was done in November.
Okay. Excellent. Anything else? No? Does anybody have any questions for Matt? I mean, it was a lot to prepare for tonight's board meeting, so thank you in advance. Anyone? No? Chief?
Couple of items, this is a busy time of the year. We always are conducting in-service training with the officers, but it's hands-on when we're utilizing the OC spray and then the taser, so we go through the certification, and then in December, I always do off duty qualification, just so officers can carry their weapon, knowing when the department has a different type of weapon. One big thing that's coming up that's on the report is tomorrow is a follow-up to the Safety Act. Part of the recommendations when that was passed was basically the Police Reform Act was to look at qualified immunity. There was a task force that was put together tomorrow, Springfield. 13 recommendations that are making their way through the task force. 10 of them are manageable from the standpoint of the Illinois Municipal League and the Illinois Chiefs and a couple other police organizations. There's some very dangerous ones that are still out there that are going to be discussed. And we're just hoping that out of the 13, what they move forward is not going to do 3 of those. So, because it will be detrimental to law enforcement and to the municipalities if any of those 3 get passed. So, don't know yet, but we're doing our best to try to work together as a consortium moving it forward, but legislatures and their own viewpoints. Keep it going.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
The speed sign on snow is no longer on.
It is. It's in stealth mode.
It's in stealth mode.
Yes. We're pulling it down. So, get some data from it.
Well, if you have someplace else to put it, just turn it on. See that no snow.
Okay. Anything else? No? Thank you, Chief. Allison, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I do. The holiday drawing contest is once again being hosted by the Admin Finance Department. So if you are a youngster, 12 and under, would like to submit a drawing, you can do so to genlog@sugargroveio.com. Information is available on the website and
She sounds like a regular commercial. Yeah. Thank you, Allison. Is it on Facebook, did you say? Okay, sorry, I didn't see that.
There's an email going tomorrow.
Excellent.
Got a few.
I love it. That'll be fun. Trustee Bonnie? No? Okay. Trustee Heron?
Town Center Committee meeting is postponed until next month, waiting on a couple of things before we present. And that is all I have.
Okay. Thank you. Trustee White? No? Trustee Lindy? No? Trustee Shoulders?
Yeah, a lot of the committees that I sit on, they've been adjusting calendars for Thanksgiving and Christmas. So the Aurora Area Convention Bureau meeting from November, December combined is this Thursday, so nothing to report there. Park District meeting, the last time that we were at, I think I shared with you, President Coleman, in a call that you and I had. There was some quite a bit of discussion as far as strategies to engage the forest preserve with respect to the bridge. Ultimately, Renee's was going to reach out to you, but I don't know if there is really anything else to really do there by the sounds of things. I think we've eaten that.
I think they're gonna come to the same conclusion we did,
Yeah.
which we appreciate them as, you know, a partner in this effort, doing their best to try to get the Forest Protection District to come on board, but I think we feel like we've exhausted the conversations to get that done.
And ironically, you know, they were listening in on the same Forest Preserve meeting that I was a month before. There was a topic as far as connecting to another local municipality's bike trail on one of the other, you know, bike trails. So it's hard not to feel slighted, I suppose, when you see you dealing with other communities. I'm sure there were different situations and circumstances with that. It didn't involve a bridge, for example. But whatever. I'm not quite sure what the next path is on that. Are we just going to proceed forward? And
yes, I think so. I can give you a little bit of an update. So, in fairness to the Forest Protection District, what I will tell you is that everything that they currently do, just like us, right? You set policy and make decisions based on history, and they have been burned on maintenance agreements before. Apparently, they have nothing to do with the canoe ramp on the river in Aurora, yet they had to redo that whole area as part of their existing maintenance agreement. So they don't want to enter into maintenance agreements going forward. They just don't have the funds, you know, like everybody, they just don't have the funds. The other thing that they did say is that they like to connect, and I think you know this as well, to regional trails, and that this is really not connecting regional trails, this is just connecting a subdivision to a regional trail. So it doesn't qualify in their mind to be part of their, you know, scope and maintenance agreement. I mean, that's why they don't want to do it. It's more, they see it as more of a benefit for our residents. And then I said, well, anybody drive down, you know, ride their bike down the trail will be able to get off. Go to Starbucks.
yeah, they didn't buy that.
Ride their bike. Going to Starbucks.
They didn't buy that.
Yeah, no, it didn't work. It didn't work out. I tried, but I understood. You know, this is more important to our folks than it is, you know, to the region. So.
What's the name of it?
Tony.
Well, we are planning on awarding phase 2 engineering in the next couple weeks, and that should take about a year if all goes well. And then probably construction now might be, let's see, this is 21, 23, hopefully, maybe 24. Because we've been slow a little bit. We had hoped to have engineering already started.
The reason I ask is that if for some reason town center ends up getting close to this, we want to move the bridge closer to the town center.
I think this is the ideal location because it has to go off of where the creek is and where the Bellevue Park is owned by the park district.
Where you can tap into
And you have to have the length of it.
Yes.
I
I think that in addition to that, there's phase 1 approval to that through IDOT, which made it eligible for the grant money. So I think it would be a very, very big hurdle. You can do anything with enough money and enough time, but it might not be the best resources.
Yeah.
How long is that?
Yeah.
It would just seem to be a decent approval to have that access, but.
So it's going to be 2023 that lines up right with
Oh. You want a dirt pavement?
Yeah.
Put carriage lights along the way?
I don't have much new to report other than we did have that EPC holiday party, which was nice to have after a year off COVID. So it was good to see some faces. It was a little strange still, you know, you're wearing your masks, and but it worked out. And always nice that Rich Harvest Farms hosted, and they're very generous with the facility and providing hors d'oeuvres for everyone. So that was nice. And also excited to have a staff holiday party this Friday. So looking forward to that. I believe it's at 11:30 or 11. 11:30. 11:30, so I'm not,
Public Works at 11:30?
Public Works at 11:30, for those of you that can make it, that's where we will be. Feel free to wear your holiday best. 'Cause God,
Best or best?
best. We should have had a contest.
Oh, we have a theme.
What do you have? You have a contest, like an ugly sweater contest, or?
No, our department was going to dress, or our side was going to dress in the theme.
I can't wait to see.
Wow.
Oh, okay, well, the cute people.
Brent didn't get the memo. Well, that's all I have. Yep, we got a motion to adjourn. Can I get a second? Oh, Heidi, we got a second out of Heidi. Roll call, please, Allison.
Trustee White. No. Trustee Lindsay. Aye. Trustee Shoga.
Aye.
Trustee Thomas.
Aye.
Trustee Karen.
Aye.
Hey, I was gonna say,